Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto returned to Konoha as an X-Man, and Ino, Rogue, Jean Grey, Hinata and Temari fell for him Part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto relaxed as Ibiki smirked. The room full of genin had been cut down drastically after the head of the Anbu and interrogation unit used his mental tests to break down genin. Also have the air cranked up. Naruto thought. "'Tis a good thing the Kyuubi made it so my body temperature alternates to keep me cool in the heat and warm in the Arctic." He smirked at the mental war that Ibiki waged on the genin. Some eliminated due to being caught cheating. Really? They're ninja. They should know that the only way to pass this test is to cheat. Naruto thought. His eyes scanned the room and he smiled at Hinata who was sitting next to Kiba and Akamaru. And that last question, Logan would be proud of Ibiki's methods. Mental note: keep Logan away from him. Naruto looked around and did a mental calculation. 78 left, meaning 26 teams. Not too bad. Bet the second part will remove more. He noticed that the Uchiha was still here as was the team from Suna. This could get messy. Naruto thought. He was broken from his musing when the door opened and a man wearing Anbu-style armor and jagged scars going across his face. Looks like he ran into Wolverine, but that's not possible. 26 teams. He asked Ibiki who nodded. We'll all make sure they get cut in half, if not more. He looked at the class and his eyes were hidden by a pair of stylish shades, his short cropped hair gave no other features. My name is Masahiro Chono. I am from this point on your one and only god. I say jump, you maggots say how high. Do you get me? Mutters and nods, and Chono scowled. I said do you get me maggots? Yes. They echoed back. Pathetic. On your feet. We're heading to the next location. Chono lead them out the door. Naruto pausing and making a hand sign Enko taught him. Ibiki closed the door. What? Intel report. Enko sensei and I found that the team from Grass and Sound are operatives to Orochimaru. There is rumors that the snake himself is here in Konoha. Sensei is looking into it. Naruto said, giving the report quickly. Damn. Ibiki muttered and thought about where the Sound and Grass teams had been sitting. I'll let Chono and the others know. You better get going. They're heading to training ground 44. Naruto nodded and Bamf ported away. Ibiki shook his head. Enko's students are interesting to say the least. He muttered and went to pick up the tests. XX. Naruto appeared behind the others, scaring many of them with the loud BAMF of his return. Hey, sorry, got lost on the. Ino covered his mouth. Where were you? She hissed as they continued walking. Had to speak with the examiner. Naruto whispered to her. They soon reached the wall with warning signs all over it. Welcome to Training Ground 44, known to many as the Forest of Death, or the Forbidden Forest. Chono said as he stood atop the stage before them. Behind him was a tent with tables. I want you all to take these consent forms and. XX. Naruto stood with Shino after they handed in the consent forms and gotten their team's scroll. Ino and Hinata joined them at their gate and the team looked on as other teams picked their scrolls and got their gates. So deaths are sanctioned now. Shino said and Naruto's eyes looked for a certain person. You are not hunting the Uchiha down. Naruto looked at his only male friend in Konoha. I'm not. No, he will seek you out. His ego demands it. Shino said. We will get the proper scroll and make our way to the tower as quickly as possible. Procrastination could cost us all. Naruto nodded with the logical Aburame air. Fine. I won't seek him. But he comes at me. Deal with him quickly and leave him for the bugs to feed on. Shino said. I thought you liked bugs. Feeding them the Uchiha might sour their stomachs. What are you two talking about? And is Shino laughing? Ino asked, seeing the usually stoic Aburame chuckling. Found something about the Uchiha funny is all. Naruto said. His hair. Ino asked. It does look like a duck's back end. Hinata said, joining them. Team 10 was passing them. Hey, forehead. Ino called out to the other four-person cell. Sakura stopped. What do you want, pig? Good luck in there. Ino said. Thanks. Sakura said. You too. Don't die. Ino called after her as Team 10 went to their gate further up. Naruto sighed as he shuffled a deck of cards. We need to think of a plan. Also, a way to identify each other. What do you mean? Ino asked. If we get separated, a code word or a hand sign. Naruto explained. I suggest we each use something unique. Shino said. I will use my bugs. He said, and they crawled out onto his hand. Ino shuddered. I can use this flower. Naruto said, handing her a white rose. Ah, it's pretty. She looked at him and he knew she was sorry for going mental earlier in the week. The unspoken apology in her eyes, and he nodded. My Byakugan. The only one who can use it is Neji, and he feels deception is beneath him. Naruto pulled off his shades. My Atomgun, and he held up a card and it glowed with red energy. Good enough. Shino said. Ready. They each shared a look and the buzzer sounded and they slipped in through the open gate and into the darkened forest. XX. 10 minutes in and they came across a trio of ninjas sporting headbands with the symbol from Rain. Look at here. Little lead nins. And they're so frightened that they need 4 to make a team. One of the nins said. Naruto turned and was impaled by a hail of Senbon against a tree. Ino screamed and Hinata cursed, not having her eyes activated. Shino wasted no time and his Kikai bugs rushed out of his sleeves to attack the trio of nin. Ino backed into a tree, her mind panicking at seeing Naruto hurt so badly. Her mind screamed at what she'd just seen. Her hand touched a vine and it seemed to pulse. XX. Hinata's attack destroyed an umbrella of one of the nin. She was about to attack again when she found it hard to breath. No, not now. She thought. Across the way, Shino's bugs covered another nin completely while the last one was stalking towards Ino, who seemed to be in shock. Hinata ducked a tossed kunai as she felt the cough welling up. She knew that she needed to put distance between her and her opponent and a chance to take her injection. Time is passing faster, the injections are getting closer together. She thought as she bobbed and weaved. She managed to hit a Juken strike to the nin's wrist and he dropped his weapon as his arm went numb. He cursed and backed away. Hinata sighed and reached into her jacket to get the prepared injector. XX. Naruto waited for his healing factor to push the Senbon needles out and the nerves to stop tingling so he could move again. He could only watch as his team was forced into a fight. He saw Ino was in shock over the savagery that he'd been put down with. Shino had gone on the offensive as soon as he saw the danger. His bugs were stripping the flesh and chakra from the Rain Nin. Hinata, he saw, was having trouble. Her health. Something is wrong. What is that? An injector of some kind. Why hasn't she told us she was sick? He thought as she rammed it into her neck and seemed to relax. She went on the attack again, not giving the Rain Nin a chance to recover, and he was down after 3 Juken strikes, his body twitching as it hit the ground. That's 2 down. Where's Ino? XX. My, aren't you a pretty little one? Shame that you're going to die here. The nin said. Ino looked at him and was repulsed. He saw her eyes go towards Naruto. Was he special to you, little girl? The man smirked. Should I deflower you before his cooling corpse? Ino felt fear, revulsion. No, stay back, she thought, and with that thought the vines on the tree lashed out and pierced the Rain Nin like spears. Ino felt the vines as if they were extensions of herself. She felt the tree's rage at the nin for threatening her. Or is that my rage? She thought, confused as the nin was ripped apart by the vines. Then she watched as the vines came towards her and like a puppy waited for acknowledgement. Go ahead, Ino-chan. She looked to see Naruto standing there, the Senbon needles being pushed from his body, his wounds closing. Naruto. I thought about it back when you heard my thoughts. You seem to have a deep connection to plants. What? She asked, confused. You're a mutant, Naruto said bluntly. You are as best as I can figure without tests or cerebro a plant psi. You can control and manipulate plants and while touching them read another person's thoughts as long as you're touching them and the same plant. I don't. Right before you kissed me on the rooftop, your hand was on mine atop a vine. Naruto said. You caught the tail and end of a thought and asked me if I'd said something. Naruto said as he sat next to her, seeing she was in shock. I can't. You've always had an affinity with plants, Ino-chan. Naruto said. He saw Hinata and Shino had removed weapons and a scroll. What did they have? He asked as the pair joined them. An earth scroll, Shino said. Hinata was quiet. Let's make for the tower then. We've got what we need, no need to tempt anything else. Naruto said and looked at Ino, who was still in shock of learning her abilities, and then he looked at Hinata. You okay? He asked her. She nodded quickly, but she knew that he'd seen her. He picked up Ino. Let's go. Best speed. Avoid everything else. Shino seemed to smirk. You're not waiting for the Uchiha. I've got more important people to see to. His gaze went to Ino and Hinata. He made a sign and Shino nodded, indicating he would keep an eye on Hinata. Hinata-chan, use your eyes please for the way ahead. Shino, your bug's on roving patrol. Naruto ordered, mentally smacking himself for not doing that right away. This could have been avoided if I'd taken a moment to think it over. Instead I get blindsided by Rain Nin and my teammates suffer. I won't let it happen again. He silently vowed as he leapt from branch to branch, a shaking Ino in his arms. I need to call the institute. Things are changing. Ino's power shouldn't have manifested yet from all the signs I read. Damn it. And what's wrong with Hinata? I need to get Beast to check her out. The trees rushed by and Naruto knew that answers would bring more questions. His concern for the blonde in his arms was making him ignore the chakra from the west. They reached the tower in an hour, only to find their way blocked by a team of genin from Hoshigakure. Naruto growled and pulled out a trio of card. Clear out. He snarled and imbuing the cards he tossed them. The poor fools didn't stand a chance as they were struck and the kinetic charge left gaping holes in their chests. Naruto and the others didn't slow down as they leapt over them and made their way to the tower's entrance. Hinata pushed the door open while Shino and his bugs kept watch. Once inside they saw the wall. Ah, crap. A word puzzle. I hate word puzzles. Naruto muttered, remembering how many word games both the professor and Jean used to give him to help sharpen his mind. The scrolls. Shino said. Open them. They must have the answers. Are you sure, Shino-kun? Hinata asked. He nodded and both he and Hinata opened them. They began to smoke. Toss 'em. Naruto ordered, still holding Ino. They did, and not a moment too soon. When the smoke cleared, Kurenai was standing there. Congratulations on. What's wrong with Ino? She asked, seeing the trembling girl. We need to talk, sensei. Naruto said. The voice she loved and was dreading to hear since the incident in the forest. She turned away from the window she'd been looking out of. Naruto-kun. She said softly. He walked up and stood next to her. You okay? He asked. How is Ino-chan? She asked instead of answering. She's calmed down and is sleeping. He answered, knowing what she was doing, but he wasn't ready to push for answers yet. Her first time using her powers actively instead of passively shocked her a bit. What was it she did? Hinata asked. Ino's a Sai, a plant Sai, meaning she can communicate using plants and she can control and manipulate plants. She might be able to do more, but I'm not certain on the specifics. I'll have to call back home and ask. He said, his hands in his pockets to keep from fidgeting or shuffling cards. We were lucky. We got in ahead of the Suna team by half an hour. He said, looking for something to say. Both were awkward, neither certain of what to say now. Hinata. Naruto. They said at the same time. They laughed. What's wrong with you, Hinata-chan? Naruto asked. She looked away. Please. Give me time. She said, her voice low. He was glad there was no stutter in her voice. Just give me until after the exams. I'll tell you everything then. Hinata-chan. Please, Naruto. I swear on my heart, I will tell you after the exam. She said and looked at him with wide eyes. Her hand trembled as she reached out like she'd done so many times before and cupped his cheek. Okay. But if you're sick, I'm not, she assured him. Naruto pulled her into a one-armed hug, her back against his chest as they looked out the window. We've got a couple of days until the second exam ends. Want to explore the tower? XX. Shino knelt atop the tower, his Kikai bugs buzzing around him. He never told Naruto and the others, but his family's bond with insects wasn't like his. I am a mutant, he thought. Unlike his family who just dealt with the bugs their clan had bonded with, Shino could communicate and control nearly any insect. He used his Kikai bugs, but they too had mutated with bonding with him. I should tell the others. Naruto and Ino wouldn't judge me, and I doubt Hinata would either. Shino sighed as he listened to the information his bugs brought him about the other teams still in the forest. He'd tagged them all during the first exam. I should have told the others that as well. If I had, we wouldn't have run into the Rain Nin like we did, and Ino wouldn't have had a breakdown. He thought about Hinata and knew she was also hiding something. What should I do, my friends? The hive inside of him linked together and gave him their opinion. XX. Ino awoke on the fourth day. She looked around and groaned as she saw the light pouring into the window. Hey Heim. She looked to the other side and saw Naruto sitting in the chair. He barely moved and she lunged and hugged him tightly. I'm here, Ino Heim. It's okay. He said. I'm sorry. She said, her voice shaking. For what? Naruto asked, pulling back and looking into her eyes. Being a spaz. Ino said. Bah. No worse than the rest of us. He said, and he stroked his fingers through her hair. Ino looked around the bed and noticed flowers and vines. What the? Believe it or not, when the nurse brought in flowers, they bloomed and became healthier. The vines came out of the walls. Naruto said. They like you. He said. Ino reached out and touched the vines and she had a feeling that they were happy. They are healthy. She said, and Naruto smiled. Try something for me. He asked. What? Do you trust me? He asked. Of course. With my heart, body and soul. Ino said without question. Take hold of the vine. Ino looked at him and did so. Now take my hand. Again a look, but she did. Now, concentrate. He said. What am I? Hello, beautiful. What? Ino said and looked at Naruto in shock. She'd been watching him, but his mouth hadn't moved. Hey, think of it as a progression of mental powers. Your family specializes in mind walking. This is just a new way. Naruto looked at her and grinned. Go ahead, try and talk. Like this? Ino's mental voice inquired. Way to go, Heim. I can get you proper training, but we'll need to go to the world above. The professor can help you learn about your ability and how to use it. Naruto's mental voice said in a soothing tone. Ino let go of the vine and she felt a slight tingle afterwards. Is that all I can do? She asked. Mind talk while holding a vine. Naruto shook his head. Remember the forest. You controlled the plants into attacking. Ino's mind went back to the forest and Naruto saw her flinch. It's okay, love. He said, pulling her into a hug again. You'll learn to control it. I'll be there. Ino was quiet for a while. Can you help me develop something? I have an idea, she said. Naruto nodded. XX. It was sunset on the fifth day when Sasuke Uchiha's team was the last to arrive inside the time limit. They look like shit, Naruto muttered, seeing the three-man team looking ragged as they joined the other teams in the chamber. Masahiro Chono stood before them. Arrayed behind him was the Junin senseis and the Hokage. Still too many, Chono muttered, spitting his toothpick out and looking at the Hokage. I'm sorry, my lord. I thought more would fail the second exam. The Hokage chuckled. It's okay, Chono. This year's genin seem to be an extraordinary bunch. He pulled out his pipe. It looks like we'll need to have a preliminary before we can let them go. Chono nodded and looked at Gecko Hayate, who stepped forward. We need to cut the remaining numbers in half before we can proceed to the third round of the Chunin exams. He said with sporadic coughs. The Junins gathered their students and led them to the balcony. Hey Anko sensei. Kurenai sensei. Naruto said in greeting. Kurenai smiled as she guided them up the stairs. She'd been worried about her team when she learned about Orochimaru in the forest. Anko had gone in after her former sensei, and had been carried out by Anbu looking like hell. When she felt the pull from the scrolls, she appeared in the tower. Seeing Hinata pale, and Naruto carrying Ino, she'd feared the worst. Hey Gaki. Anko said. I heard you brats had the best record for getting to the tower. Naruto shrugged. Our need was great and we got lucky right off the bat. Anko snorted. I saw the tower's video of the outside. You didn't hold back. Naruto shrugged. Mes ami be mal pri. Naruto said softly. I don't know what you said, Gaki. Anko said. He gave her a look. My friends. They were in a bad situation. Ino was in shock and Hinata's health. He shrugged. Anko nodded in understanding. You did the right thing. I just wanted you to know that we know, and if you want to talk about it, Kurenai or I will be there for you. Get me? Naruto bowed his head. We. He looked around and noticed the board on the wall. So this is tete-a-tete. What? Naruto smirked. Head to head. You know, one-on-one. Oh, yeah. Too many of you made it past the second round. They need to cut you down some more. Why? Naruto asked. The third round is Anko. Kurenai admonished. They can't know that until after the Hokage makes the announcement. Fine. Sorry, brat. Anko said. Naruto shrugged. He felt someone approaching and turned to see Sasuke. What do you want, Uchiha? He asked. I will crush you and learn your secrets. Sasuke said. Naruto snorted. Whatever. Go back to your fan club. No one here cares what you think are your delusions. Naruto turned his back and Sasuke was going to take a step towards the blonde, but Anko got between them. You kiss. Get your genin back. Anko called out to Sasuke's new teacher. The man looked bored and came and took Sasuke away, promising the Uchiha he'd teach him a new jutsu after the exam. Asshole. Which one? Naruto asked. Take your pick. I think I preferred that random character to Rei's. Anko said. There it goes. Kurenai said. They'd been surprised no one gave up when Hayate asked. Naruto thought for certain someone would have, especially the Uchiha's team, as they all looked like hell coming into the chamber. The board lit up and names flashed across. It stopped on 2 names. Ino Yamanaka versus Sakura Haruno. Naruto looked at Ino, who sighed. Well, I guess forehead just drew the short straw. She looked at Naruto. Good luck, Ino Heim, he said and gave her a quick kiss. Hinata gave her a quick hug and whispered, luck. Be careful, Kurenai said. I will be, Ino said and nodded. She will lead with a basic bunshin. Shino intoned. Her skills aren't changed much as she still spends more time chasing the Uchiha than working with her team. Thanks, Shino, Ino said and took the stairs. Sakura looked at her. Well, pig, ready to lose in front of Sasuke-kun. Ino sighed. I could care less about what that emo prick thinks. Ino said, taking up the stance she'd learned from Kurenai. She noticed that Sakura still used the academy basic and shook her head. I hope you'll forgive me for beating you, forehead. But I need to show Naruto-kun that I can fight alongside of him. Hayate stepped back. Fight. Sakura went to attack, not wasting time talking, but Ino looked bored as she avoided Sakura's punch. Ino responded with a chop to the back of Sakura's neck that sent her staggering before crashing to the ground. In the balcony, Kiba yelled for Sakura to get up. She was embarrassing her team. Give up, Sakura, Ino said. I don't want to hurt you, she said, her eyes looking at Naruto, and he nodded in understanding. Cha, as if pig, Sakura said, getting to her feet, missing the fact that Ino hadn't insulted her, but called her by name. I'm not letting you show me up in front of Sasuke-kun. Then what happens will not be my fault, as I have given you a chance to walk away. I don't give a fig about the Uchiha. You want him, he's all yours. I've got someone who loves me and respects me, Ino said, adjusting the band around her wrist. Ino and Naruto knew that it was vines from the outside the tower. They'd picked them yesterday, and Ino was about to show everyone what she could do. Sakura sent a trio of kunai at Ino as she charged, forming the hand seals and created 4 bunchins that mirrored her. Ino avoided the kunai and threw her hand out. Sakura skidded to a stop, unsure what Ino threw. She looked and was confused. What the hell are those, pig? Ino smiled. They were seeds she'd hidden in her hand after checking the vine bracelet. Seeds, or is it too hard to recognize them for what they are? She asked. Sakura not sure, but ignorant, knowing Ino couldn't have a powerful jutsu in the short amount of time, as she herself didn't have one, charged. As Sakura was in the middle of the scattered seeds, Ino called on her newly awakened mutant power, and the seeds exploded in rapid growth and vines wrapped themselves around Sakura's legs, tripping her and dispersing the bunshin. Hey! Sakura whined as the vines bound her. You can't do that, the pink-haired girl screamed. The older ninja thought one word. Mokuden. In the balcony, a pair of eyes narrowed at this new development. Ino sighed. Give up, Sakura. I don't want to hurt you. Sakura struggled, but the more she did, the tighter the vines squeezed. Ow. Stop it, she whined. You're the one struggling, Sakura, Ino said. She didn't want to do this, but it was the only way without hurting her childhood friend. Ag hhh. Sakura screamed and passed out from the lack of oxygen. Hayate shook himself. Winner. Ino Yamanaka. Ino nodded and motioned her hand, and the vines released and slithered away from Sakura like a snake and wrapped themselves around Ino's waist. She patted them as she slowly climbed the stairs to her team's cheering. Ino. She looked at Asuma, the Junin sensei of Sakura's team. She's just unconscious, Ino said. He nodded his thanks. Ino was nearly back to her team where Naruto was grinning like a loon when she found her path blocked by a certain black-haired genin. Where did you get that power? Was born with it, Ino said, and several Junin's eyes widened hearing this. I must have it. Sasuke said. What you need is to step off before I kick you. Ino said. Kami, what does it take to get it into his head? Tell me how. Sasuke demanded. Get away from her asshole, before I kick your and give you another spanking. Sasuke turned to see Naruto standing with Shino. Stay out of this. I have the right to. Naruto shoved by him and led Ino back to her teammates. Sasuke was about to grab Naruto when he found his wrist in a very tight grip of Anko. Learn your lesson before it kills you. No means no and you aren't special. She looked at the man who was in charge of Sasuke's team. Control your student. Naruto kissed her forehead as she snuggled against him. It felt wonderful. I can feel it now. It's purring like a kitten. Ino said. I promise Ino-chan, this is just the beginning into a whole new world. He said. Their attention went to the board and saw the names. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Sai, Konoha. Versus. Gaara, Suna. Now we'll see. Naruto muttered as he watched Sasuke's teammate head down the stairs. Naruto looked to where the one Anko had warned him about while they were on their mission. So dad be Sunagaku's Jinchuriki. Looks like he be needin' some Z's. Naruto thought as Gaara shushined to the arena with his sand. Not good. Naruto looked to see Anko next to him. What's that, sensei? He asked, pitching his voice low. He's not sane. Look into his eyes. The reports are accurate. Anko answered. Ino between the pair shivered as the redhead looked around. Is he like you? She asked. Sort of share. Naruto said. His arm not occupied had pulled out several cards, holding them loosely between his fingers. Sensei? He inquired. Not yet. Anko answered. Naruto nodded. What? Ino asked, lost. Later. Too many ears. Naruto said. Below Hayate started the match and they watched as Sai leapt back and had a sketch pad and ink brush. He's painting a portrait. Ino asked. A pictomancer. Anko said. Danzo's been hiding some secrets. Naruto felt something and turned to see Hinata take his other arm loosely. Her gaze was on the match below. Why isn't he attacking? Naruto knew. It was something he'd seen on Genosha. He wants to be tested. He be playin' with him. Ino looked at Naruto, as his accent was getting thicker. She saw his atomgun eyes were taking it all in as below Sai's Ink Tiger attacked, only to barely avoid a hand of sand. He's not using any hand signs. Hinata remarked, her Byakugan eyes on the redhead. He doesn't need to. Naruto said. He controls sand like we breath. They watched as Sai drew several more creatures and they flew off the page. One resembled a giant raven, another was a second ink tiger, but to Gaara they were a minor annoyance and Sai never saw the thin trail of sand that had slithered across the ground until it was too late and he was enveloped in a cocoon of sand, his creations impaled by sand spears, and before the proctor could stop it, Gaara with a crazed look intoned, sand burial. In a creepy, cold voice. Sai's blood oozed to the floor and several of the genin looked sick. And he barely tried. Naruto said as Hayate declared Gaara the winner. Where's his body? He heard Sakura ask. It was Anko who answered. He pulverized it with his sand. Nothing left but a smear and the dropped sketch pad. Below, Hayate picked up said instrument and put it to the side of the stairs. Gaara had returned to his position across the way. The Konoha genin were now nervously watching him. XX. The matches continued with Shino beating Oto Nin Zaku, blowing up the nin's arms by blocking the air tubes in his arms that created his sound attacks. Shikamaru beat Kin of the Oto Nin by lulling her into a false sense of security and using his shadow possession jutsu to ram her into a wall, knocking her out. Kabuto beat Kiba with a few well-placed chakra scalpels, temporarily incapacitating the Inuzuka by locking up his muscles in his spine. Choji put up a hell of a fight against the last of the Oto Nin, but in the end Dosu, the team's leader, came out on top by trapping Choi against the wall and using a claw hold assaulted Choji with sound waves, literally ringing the Akamichi's bell and knocking him out. Naruto shook his head as Temari of Suna abused Tenten, blocking everything the weapon's user threw at her with her fan and a few wind attacks. Naruto watched as the bun-haired girl was saved from spinal injury at the end after Temari won when her teammate Rock Lee saved her. That is just, Ino said, indicating her thoughts about the boy's bowl-cut hair and very bushy eyebrows. Not too many of us left non. Naruto said, looking around. Kurenai nodded. You, Rock Lee, Sasuke Uchiha, Akado Yoroi, the last Sand Nin, Hinata, her cousin Neji and Akado's partner. Naruto's eyes landed on the grass nin. What happened to their third teammate? He asked. Died after they reached the tower. Was heavily poisoned in the forest. They didn't get the anti-venom to him in time. Kurenai said. Anko snorted. They knew her thoughts about what had happened to the last grass nin. The board finally cycled and the two names came up. Sasuke Uchiha Konoha versus Nyoba Kusa. The pale grass nin walked down while Sasuke was being pumped up by his sensei. This is going to be pathetic. Naruto muttered as the of Konoha strutted to the arena below. Would be funny if he lost. Shino said from nearby, his sunglass-covered eyes never leaving the arena, and the steady hum of his hive actually soothing to his teammates. They watched as the match began and Sasuke went on the attack, performing a leaping spinning roundhouse kick at the very same time that Nyoba performed a flipping axe kick. Both blows connected. In a different world had Sasuke activated his Sharingan, this might have been a different fight. Sadly the heel of Nyoba's foot dropped Sasuke's head into the arena ground at the same time Sasuke's kick connected with the Nyoba's ear and sent both boys crashing, the grass nin spinning away, the Uchiha eating the turf. Hayate looked on and counted. He reached 20 and neither team moved. This match is over. Neither competitor advances. He announced. Reyes was incensed as the Uchiha was carried out. You can't do that. The council forbids. Asuma's fist connected with the man's throat and the council appointed Junin for Team 7 was on the ground hacking, unable to speak. He lost. Adjust. The chain-smoking Sarutobi said lighting up a fresh cigarette off the end of the last one. Naruto shook his head and watched as Reyes was told to leave, his last student would seek him out after it was done. And then there be 6. Naruto said. The board stopped with an ominous sound and he felt Hinata stiffen next to him, her arms tightened around his. His blue on black saw the names and he knew this match was not one that his girlfriend wanted. Neji Hyuga Konoha versus Hinata Konoha. The disowned girl swallowed. Give up if you want to Hina Heim. Naruto said looking into her eyes. We'll support you no matter what. You shouldn't have to face. Ino started but Hinata shook her head, her lavender eyes looking down to the arena floor where her cousin was waiting, a look of pure hatred in his eyes as he looked at her. And no. I need to do this. Hinata said, a flash of her old nervousness showing. She paused before going down and kissed Naruto quickly. For luck, she said and was heading for the stairs. Naruto's eyes noticing her hands were shaking and he was very concerned. Sensei. I know. Kurenai said. I'll step in if I have to. She said. Naruto recalled the hatred her own family showed soon after he'd come back to Konoha those months back. The time when Hinata was disowned and her moving in with Ino's family for safety. Now the bastards have a chance to hurt her and I can't protect her. Naruto thought, his gloved hands clenching the rail. Neji's gaze hardened. Look, it's the family failure. Oh, wait, it was your fate to be kicked out. He taunted her as she took up a stance across from him. Hinata said nothing as Neji's eyes hardened. I won't give up. Hinata said taking up her stance. Neji sneered. You think to impress a loser and his whore, how sweet. But it figures. You are so weak you can't find a male on your own, you need to share with another weak kunoichi. In the balcony Naruto growled and it sounded feral. Ino's own matched it as their eyes locked on Neji's back. As if sensing them he looked over his shoulder. Does that bother you? I don't see why. You both are nothing but trash. A hint of killing intent had Neji turn back to see Hinata straightening up more and her stance become flawless. You may insult me Neji Hyuga. She spat, the venom in her voice showing none of the hesitancy she had before. But you will not insult those I love. Neji sneered and as Hayate started the match it became more pronounced. I will remove your stain on the Hyuga honor. Your lovers as you call them can place flowers on your grave. Both activated the famed Byakugan and it was on. The mirrored image Juken attacks were equally avoided. Neji tried again and was shocked when Hinata's palm stopped his, and then even more when she lashed out with a kick to his stomach. He moved back and studied her for a moment and went in again, his attack precise, but Hinata avoided it fully and her own strike hit his forearm. He saw her Byakugan eyes and didn't see the timid girl he used to intimidate. He saw something that made him pause. Hatred. Pure hatred aimed directly at him. Hinata's attacks came faster and Neji didn't have time to think as she actually pushed him back and was making him avoid her in ways that she should have been avoiding him. How is this possible? Fate decreed I was the better fighter. He thought as another blow to his forearm had it tingle. Forced to evade, Neji leapt backwards and saw that she wasn't following. Way to go, Hinata. The twin shouts from above gave Neji an inkling of what had happened. She changed the moment I attacked them. Neji's eyes took in Hinata's stance. It's bolder, but at the same time her moves are fluid. This isn't the pure Juken style. This is something else. He blinked as she moved, and he sidestepped, his hands a blur as they connected with her right arm. Hinata went low with a leg sweep and Neji leapt up, but as he did Hinata lashed out with her left arm and struck his knee. He landed and crumpled. He watched as she gathered her chakra and was undoing the damage he'd done to her right arm. How? That's not possible. Hinata saw his look and decided to explain. You and Hiashi Hyuga are both the same. She said coldly. You look down on the true method of the Juken style like the council does and are blind to the more subtle styles of the gentle fist. You both believe in pounding and beating, that is not the way of the style. Hinata flexed her right hand and Neji saw all her chakra paths were open once more. You don't understand the real power of the gentle fist, and you never will. She shook her head. The gentle fist is meant to be subtle to hinder or heal with but a touch. Med Nin learned the art of acupuncture from the Hyuga. The Hyuga of old were healers, scholars. Now they are selfish and close-minded. I'm sorry for what I am going to do, but I walk a different path. She looked up to where Naruto and the others were watching and smiled. A better path. She motioned for him to continue, and Neji knew it would be harder with one working leg. But at that moment he knew that he would need to do as Hiashi and the Council of Elders ordered. He would use the death blow on Hinata. Struggling to a vertical base, he stood on his good leg, and got his balance. I have to time this perfectly. Neji thought as he took up his stance. I will show you, Neji, you and the rest of the Hyuga family, what an outcast can do. Hinata said and lunged. Neji waited, his eyes focused on the one point. As she closed in, he developed tunnel vision and once she was in range he struck like a viper, his hand hitting the spot right above her heart, even as Hinata's own palm tapped his chest and he felt his sternum crack under the gentle blow. XX. Naruto and Ino were watching as Hinata fought her cousin. She's doing it, Naruto said with a grin. Of course she is, Whiskers. You don't think I'd let her use me as a taijutsu dummy all the time for nothing now, did you? Ino shot at him. They both cheered when Hinata got a good strike. Way to go, Hinata. Kurenai, Anko and Shino were the only ones still around them as other genin and their instructors backed away. That's our Hinata, Naruto said as he watched her heal her arm and explained to Neji about the differences and the real purpose of the gentle fist style. He smiled as Hinata let Neji get to his feet and attacked. He couldn't see it from where he was, but the moment they both connected, Naruto knew something had gone very wrong. Even as Neji collapsed holding his chest, he watched Hinata slump backwards. Hinata, Ino screamed. XX. Hinata hit the ground. She realized it the moment Neji struck her what he had done. Her Byakugan deactivated and she found her eyes searching out Naruto. She saw his worried face and she coughed, hard wet coughs. Naruto-kun. She thought as she felt her body becoming lighter. Did I impress you? Am I strong enough to be your wife? Hinata felt something changing. I guess Neji's strike destroyed the block. She thought. She didn't hate her cousin, she pitied him. She was mad at him for his words, but she could never hate him as she hated the man that was her father. She looked at her hand that covered her mouth and saw it was a mixture of blood and ash. Mother was right, she thought as she rolled over and pushed herself to her knees. She saw the proctor as well as Neji's shocked eyes. Neji's were wide and she knew that he thought he'd connected with the death strike. You did, but it didn't kill me, Neji, it set me free. Hinata thought as she stood. Everyone in the arena was in shock as smoke began to rise from Hinata. She gave another hacking cough and spit. What was blood when it hit the ground, turned into a small fire on the arena floor. Hinata's skin became redder and her Byakugan blazed to life as fire formed in her hair and surrounded her. Hinata. Ino's second scream had her look up to the balcony. She met Naruto's blue-on-black eyes and saw he understood now. He nodded even as he held Ino from rushing down there. She's okay. He heard him say. She's really okay. Hinata smiled and looked at Neji who struggled to his feet. You tried to kill me. She said, her voice harsher as the smoke and ash was changing her body structure. What are you? Neji said, hopping back on one foot. His breathing was difficult since the blow Hinata delivered, and now she was before him once more, and she seemed to be made of fire. I am fire and ash, I am living lava. The block my mother put on me as a child is freed thanks to your death strike. Hinata said as she took a step towards him. She was leaving flaming footprints on the floor, and she saw the proctor was looking at her in fear. Did you really hate me that much, Neji? She asked. She saw his eyes and knew the answer. I see, she said sadly. Before anyone could say anything, she screamed out, and the fires that were a part of her body now increased in intensity. The arena floor shook a bit, and everyone watched as hot magma rose up. The proctor leapt away, but Neji didn't get a chance as a clump of lava rose into the air, slammed into him like a missile. It sent him flying across the arena, where he hit the wall unconscious and burning. The proctor, seeing this, called the match winner. Hinata. The Jonin and Neji's teacher guy were there with water jutsus, putting the fire out and calling for the medics. Neji's chest was covered with third-degree burns and his breathing was labored. Hinata stood there, shocked at what she'd just done. So shocked she revered to normal. I didn't mean, I didn't want. Naruto was there and held her as she broke down in tears. He tried to soothe her, telling her it was all right, everything would be all right. The magma she'd summoned flowed a bit, then slowed and hardened. Team 8 gathered on the floor as Naruto calmed Hinata, Ino and Shino both rubbing her back, while Anko and Kurenai stood protectively nearby. XX. Once the medics were done and they'd checked over Hinata, who said she was fine, the Hokage stepped forward and looked at the damage to the arena. He talked with the gathered Jonin and came to a decision. With the amount of damage done to the arena, it has been decided that the last 4 fighters will advance to the next round. Naruto was disappointed that he didn't get to fight, but hearing some of the structure around them groan, he had to agree with the Hokage, and if he were to cut loose, it wouldn't be standing. Ibiki was standing there with a jar. Take one, he said. Naruto reached in and pulled out a ball with a 10 on it. When I point at you, tell me what number you have. Ibiki instructed as he stepped back next to the Hokage with a clipboard. 1. Gaara intoned. 3. From Shino. His hive was buzzing loudly, giving him their opinion and information. Kabuto adjusted his glasses and held up the ball. 5. Yash. I have 7. Rock Lee said, disappointed he didn't get to fight, but he vowed to avenge his teammates' defeat in the next round. The bandage-wrapped Dosu held up a ball that had 9 on it, and not saying a word. 10. Naruto said with a grin. Temari was next. 8. I got a 6, I guess. Ino said, holding up the ball with the 6 on it. Shikamaru was next. What a drag. 4. Hinata was next as she held up the 2 marked ball. T2. She said, a bit nervous. Akato, who had been lucky to avoid a fight, held up the 11 ball, and Konkuro smirked as he held up the 12. Thank you all. The Hokage said. The next round will be held in 1 month. Ibiki said and turned the clipboard around so they could see it. A tournament. Shikamaru muttered. So, does that mean only one person can become Chunin? No, this is to gauge your abilities and. The Hokage coughed. Allow me to explain. Ibiki backed off and the Hokage gave a speech about the finals and what they could mean for potential clients. Naruto ignored this as he looked at the brackets. Round 1. Match 1. Gaara vs Hinata. Match 2. Shino Aburame vs Shikamaru Nara. Match 3. Kabuto Yakushi vs Ino Yamanaka. Match 4. Rock Lee vs Temari. Match 5. Dosu Kinuta vs Naruto Labo. Match 6. Akato Yoroi vs Konkuro. Uneven brackets. Wonder how they'll fix this. Naruto thought as the Hokage dismissed them. Team 8 was nearing the exit when they found their way blocked by an irate Hiyashi Hyuga. You little monster. He snarled at Hinata. I knew you should have been drowned at birth. That bitch of a mother. Naruto had enough of the pompous that was Hiyashi Hyuga and stepped between the man and his outcast daughter. Back off right now, or we be having a smackdown right here and now. Naruto growled. His atomgun eyes flashed, and unnoticed by all, a card had slid from his sleeve into his hand and was already glowing with a deadly charge. I didn't ask for your opinion, boy. Hiyashi snarled. And I didn't give it. I told you to step off, or we mix it up right here. The sound of the energy finally drew attention as Hiyashi looked down and saw the deadly weapon. I did this to Kakashi Hatake accidentally. What do you think I will do to you intentionally if you say anything more to Hinata? Hiyashi had read the report that had been provided to the council. And he realized how dangerous the blonde was then. Now that his useless daughter was under his protection, Hiyashi snarled and stormed away. Naruto was tense and stepped away from the comforting hands of Ino and Hinata, and after several steps, turned and threw the kinetically charged card and watched as the boulder it hit exploded, raining debris for several feet. Everyone scattered as Naruto clenched his fist, his eyes following Hiyashi as the man left the area. Ino looked at Hinata, and finally couldn't help it. So, you're a mutant too. Hinata laughed for the first time in days. I've known about it since I was really little. Hinata began as they sat comfortably around Naruto's living room after the preliminaries. The four genin along with their jonin instructors were waiting to hear about Hinata's unveiling. When I was 5, my lungs were turning to ash, my power began to consume me. She said, and both Naruto and Ino took a hand, giving her reassurance through gentle squeeze. My mother, desperate to save me, found a doctor. He was called, a strange foreigner, but he checked me over and after a little bit of time presented me with an injector, and every 6 months a package would appear with medicine to keep my lungs from dissolving. She sighed. I see now, it was either his mistake or a lie. Wait, did you say? Naruto asked, a sinking feeling in his stomach. Why, yes. Hinata was confused. Naruto rose. Wait here, he said, and standing rushed upstairs to his room. He grabbed the mobile hologram projector Forge had made. He grabbed his laptop from his nightstand as well and prayed he was wrong. Coming down, he set the laptop down, and after logging in he connected the projector. What are you doing? Anko asked. She herself liked computers, but she'd never seen anything like what Naruto had. An image fluttered into being. Was this the doctor? Naruto asked. There was a man, white skin, black hair and beard with blood-red eyes, pointy sharp teeth and a red diamond mark on his head. He was wearing blue armor with a cape. And no, that isn't him. Hinata said. Naruto sighed in relief, then remembered something that Cyclops had said to him long ago. He tapped a few more keys on the keyboard. The image altered slightly, showing a man with similar looks, pale skin, and normal-looking eyes and teeth, wearing a suit. How about now? Hinata looked at it and nodded. Quote exclamation mark quote. Naruto swore and paced. That's Nova. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. He stopped pacing and looked at both Ino and Hinata, who looked at him concerned. Shino was even leaning forward. The man you know is in fact a very dangerous mutant known as Mr. Sinister. He looked at the image and shuddered as he remembered how many times that man had made not only Scott and Jean's life a living hell, but the crap he put his adoptive brother, father, through. He's nearly immortal as we can tell. Naruto wasn't sure what to say. Did he take any blood and tissue samples from you, Hinata-chan? The pale-eyed girl nodded. He said he needed them to make my medicine in the hopes of finding a cure for me. Naruto sighed. He wasn't looking for a cure. Until Beast gets here, I ask you not to use that injector. I don't think I will. Since I transformed, I feel different. Hinata said, holding a hand to her chest. I don't feel like my insides are ripping apart. Naruto nodded. If you see him again, or get a package, please let me know. Sinister is a scientist who believes he can create a super mutant. He's come across my family numerous times and it's never a good thing. So we kick his. Ino said. Naruto shook his head. It's not that easy, Ino Heim. Sinister is powerful. He's taken on 9 or 10 opponents at once and is left standing. And he has several powerful bands of mutants around him as well. Not to mention his alliance with Apocalypse, which might include the Dark Riders and some incarnation of the Horsemen. Naruto thought to himself, remembering how bad things get when the ancient mutant is involved. For now we keep our eyes open and train for the finals. Naruto said. Yeah, congratulations about that. Anko said. Our whole team made it in. We need to come up with plans for your matches. Kurenai said. Hinata's got the toughest fight in the first round. I'll help her with that. Naruto said. But what about your own training? Kurenai asked. I'm used to my skills and am already prepared. Hinata needs someone to learn her powers with, as does Ino. I can help Ino. Shino said. My family's bloodline mutated in me alone, and I can use my various insects to help her learn about communicating more with her plants. And I can speak with my dad about getting different seeds to use. Ino said. Then we'll meet together every other day and do team drills and spars. Kurenai said after talking with Anko. One of us will be with each pair up with you, that way you have a sensei present should there be complications. Naruto thought about it. Can you get us a training ground with water and sand? He asked Kurenai. I'll check with the Hokage. She said. He looked at the image of Sinister. I need to contact my family, let them know of what's happened. Knowing them, they'll be here long before the third exam takes place. Naruto shot a look at Shino as Ino and Hinata left with promises to be back for dinner. Anko and Kurenai left saying they'd meet up tomorrow. You know more than you're letting on, Shino. I know. My bugs and I are different than those my family have. I've developed 3 separate hives in my body that aren't my family's Kikai. They are my central hive. He held his hand over his heart. They along with me changed. I thought at first that it was a simple advancement of my bloodline. Naruto was amazed. This was the most Shino had spoken at once, but he kept quiet as the Aburame heir seemed to need to speak now more than he did. When I brought it to the attention of the main hive in my family's compound, I was presented by the Kikai Queen. Shino pulled his shades off and Naruto didn't see normal eyes, they were bug eyes, multifaceted. She knew my whole DNA was different. Since team assignments I have been changing, and when you mentioned mutation, my father sent for books from the world above. Shino made a sound. Some of my bugs have been taken for study to see if this will alter the others. Thus far none of my clan have been able to handle or communicate with the new breed. Shino looked at Naruto. My father, while proud of me, has asked that should my genetics prove strong and I can breed them, that I start a new clan of Aburame. So, you figured you're a mutant? Naruto said. I can ask Beast when he arrives to run some blood tests to find out for sure. But like you said, it could just be your Kekai Genkai has changed. Shino sighed. I will ask that you keep what I've told you in confidence until we know for sure. My clan isn't going to say anything until then either, and will continue researching as this has never happened before. I thought your clan tried to breed new bugs and such. Naruto asked. But the existing hive in one's body has never altered, and no other member of my clan has had other hives in their body. Shino extended his hand and there rested a bug that looked like a cross between a scorpion and a dragonfly. I've been able to merge bugs together to form whole new species. That what makes me sure that I am a mutant and not an advancement of my family's bloodline as many think. Naruto nodded. He remembered when his own gift had activated. He thought it was another trick from the Kyuubi, then later thought it was his own Kekkei Genkai kicking in. It hadn't been until Beast had run several tests. I'll tell Hank to bring extra gear. Naruto said, pulling out his pocket watch and looked at it. I swear, I've been here a couple months and mutants are popping up all over. Wonder how many there are. Shino shrugged. The bug in his hand made a sound and Naruto looked at it. Could you put that away? Shino actually chuckled as the bug seemed to slither into a slit in his wrist. Naruto shuddered. I don't mind the usual bugs, but that one. I believe Shikamaru won't know what hit him. Shino said. And that sound Nin has no clue what I can do. Naruto said. We just need to get the girls ready, both in their ninja skills and their abilities. Ino will be fine, she's got the basis down, and time spent with you learning about communication and her dad about other plants will help. What are your plans for Hinata? Coach her in the use of her powers, see if there is a limit. And pray the others come quick after I call them. Hinata's power reminds me of Magma's and Jean's when she's in her phoenix form. Naruto thought. XX. Once the house was locked down and Naruto made sure Shino hadn't left any bugs, he activated the computer's camera. Solitaire to war room. Solitaire to war room. Priority 1 alert. He waited for a moment before repeating the message. The hollow projector showed a sleepy-looking Jean Grey Summers. Naruto. Hey Jeannie. We have several problems. Record this and present it to everyone when they're awake. Naruto said. Okay. It's set. Jean said, coming fully awake as Naruto spoke, leaving nothing out about events since the encounter with Random and up through his talk with Shino. When he finished he sighed. I'm not sure what more to do. I aim to help Hinata learn about her abilities as best I can, but I am afraid what might happen. You certain her abilities are similar to Magma's? Jean asked. She brought lava up through the floor. I think that's a good indication. But her fiery form reminded me of your phoenix form. Naruto said. Sit tight Naruto. I'll get the others and we'll call you. I have a feeling we'll be coming sooner than expected. I don't mind. I miss you all. And we miss you, little sunshine. Even Logan, despite him not admitting it. Jean said. Naruto smiled at the nickname she'd given him when he was younger, as he'd always been bright in his hair color. Jean smiled. Both Laura and Sarah are looking forward to coming back, something about putting two girls in their place. Naruto groaned. Ino and Hinata. This is going to be messy. Not if Rogue is involved. She had them cleaning the Blackbird and hangar for a week after they got back and Kitty spilled the beans. Naruto sighed. I'll keep my communicator active. Now, go back to bed before Psyche wakes up. We all know he's a stick in the mud without 8 hours. Hinata sighed as Naruto with Haku was working her hard. When Naruto had shown up at the flower shop before 6 am, she knew it was going to be long. They were currently working on her transforming to her fire state. Kurenai was off to the side watching. Anko and Shino were going to be working with Ino, as both had things that the blonde could learn with their styles, and Ino's dad had spent the night putting together packets of various seeds and a scroll of family jutsus for Ino to learn. Stop. Hinata sighed as she sunk to her knees. For hours Haku and Naruto had worked with her, but she thus far had not been able to repeat the form she had when she demolished Neji in the preliminaries. What am I doing wrong? She asked as Naruto knelt next to her. He looked at Haku. How are you? He asked the dark-haired girl. I am numb, she said, shaking her arm. She'd volunteered to be Hinata's opponent during the spar. It's not the fighting, he muttered. Then he snapped his fingers. Well then, it's the emotion you were feeling. He sighed. It would have to be emotions that activate your powers. He sighed. We'll break for an early lunch. I need to think about how we're going to go about this. The right emotion is needed, but we don't want to use the wrong one and have Konoha look like the after effect of Pompeii. At the looks from Haku, Hinata and Kurenai, he shook a hand. World above accident. He sighed. We'll talk over lunch. Haku. I need to check on Zabuza. He tends to get lost without me watching. She said. And it was a proven fact. Without someone giving him directions, Zabuza gets lost 3 minutes out the door. Naruto didn't believe it until he found the former missing nin in the middle of Konoha Central Park near tears, as he couldn't find his way back after getting turned around one too many times. You're both welcome to join us, he offered. Haku smiled and shook her head. Thanks, but I do have class at the hospital. I'm getting my certification as a medic nin and can't miss any of the lessons. Thanks for the help this morning, Naruto said. Yes, thank you, Haku, Hinata said. Once the ice user was gone, Naruto looked at Hinata, who seemed down. You're not doing bad, Hinata-chan, he said. Then why can't I transform or access my power again? Hinata asked. Naruto smirked. Oh, Hinata. He took her hand as they walked, Kurenai with them looking interested as well. It's not always bang power. Heck, Papa Lebo told me it took him months before he could use his power properly. He told me the time when he was dozing on the couch, not even focusing, and next thing he knew his power leaked out and he blew up the couch. Naruto remembered the image of that, his big brother, adopted father, telling him stories to cheer him up when he was having issues with his own powers and was thinking of sealing himself in his room away from everyone. What about you? Hinata asked. Naruto grinned. I was terrified of being around people after several accidents. I hurt someone I consider best friend badly. She forgave me with no problems, but I was so scared of my abilities. You still haven't told us what you can do, Kurenai added. Naruto shot her a grin. I haven't, have I? He asked with a fox-like grin. But it was bad enough with all the abilities the Kyuubi copied to me. For example, my BAMF port he got me. I wasn't focused and I was teleporting all over the place when I was upset. Kurt spent hours trying to calm me down. His power is focus, and I wasn't focusing, I just wanted to get away from everyone. Naruto shook his head. Then there was the whole copying of Papa's power. I blew up nearly 100 coffee mugs before I learned the mental switch for that. He patted Hinata's hand. So, don't worry if you don't get it right away. That's what training and experimenting is about. Truthfully, I'm hoping Jean and the others get here soon. Your fiery form reminded me of hers, while your powers reminded me of a former students of the institute. They walked the streets talking about random things, Naruto trying to keep Hinata's spirits high with anything from his attempts at learning to cook the first time to a night of truth or dare that ended with him streaking across the front yard of the institute. He smirked at the blush on Hinata's face when he said that. You've done a lot of things it seems. Kurenai said. Naruto looked over his shoulder and smirked. Every day was an adventure of some kind. Being in Konoha has been like a vacation for the most part. At a raised eyebrow he continued. I'm not being attacked by other mutants with a grudge against my family for one reason or another, not being attacked by a group of racists thinking they need to purge mutants from the planet. I'm not getting into an adventure from a misfired experiment or an alien crashing into the mansion. Just training and hanging is relaxing. The missions are like chores or one of Logan's training simulations. The more I hear of this Logan, the more I worry about him meeting Anko. Kurenai said. Naruto laughed. You and me both, sensei. He admitted. The few members that she'd met while in Wave told her that his family would be able to defend themselves. And Naruto had told them about X-23 and that she was a female clone of Logan with some differences. They entered Shushuya and after placing their order continued their discussion. So, you plan on returning home with them after the Chunin exam then? Kurenai asked. Naruto shrugged. Not really. I did promise I'd stay for a bit longer than that. The blonde said, messing around with a couple of cards, which Kurenai knew meant that he was anxious or nervous. Kurenai then asked the question that her and Anko had talked about since meeting Naruto's family. Are you planning on taking your teammates with you? Naruto's blue-on-black eyes looked over at her. That is up to them. I can't and won't speak for them. Kurenai sighed. She and Anko had been talking. If you do, we, meaning Anko and I would like to go with. Hinata gasped and Naruto's nervous flipping of cards stopped. Why? He asked. Kurenai believed he deserved an answer. You know how Anko is treated here in Konoha, correct? Naruto nodded. He got the same from many of the civilians and it was like living in a Friends of Humanity community. I think it would be best to get her away from here before the council does something like order her on a suicide run. Hinata looked at her and nodded as Naruto's eyes landed on her. You've seen how my former family acts. They aren't above being petty. The only thing keeping Anko-san out of their hands right now is that she is a teacher at this time. Once our team passes on to Chunin status, she is back doing regular missions and they can choose her to perform one outside the control of the Hokage. How? Naruto asked. I thought the ninja forces were the Hokages to control alone. Kurenai sighed. Every 6 months, as you know, the Hokage along with an escort go to the Fire Daimyo's court. While he's gone, the village is left in the control of the council. That is when they try and pull power plays. Last time they sent Anko after an S-rank missing nin from Mist. The Lightning Empress nearly killed Anko, but she got lucky and returned to Konoha. Spent months laid up. Kurenai said, clenching her hand, remembering that day Anko had dragged herself through the gates. That was about 9 months before you came back. She said softly. Naruto was liking Konoha less and less as time passed. His reasons for staying were getting fewer. When I leave, you and Anko are welcome to come with. I'm not sure how you'll like the world above. Kurenai remained quiet as the waitress brought their food. The red-eyed Jonin saw the look the woman gave Naruto. Anything has got to be better than this. For both Anko and you. Naruto nodded in agreement and sipped his water. Hinata-chan? He asked. Aye. She took a deep breath and tried again. Ino and I have talked about it at length. She said softly. When the time comes, we plan on leaving with you, wherever you go. Are you sure? He asked. I have no family, and I want to be with you, as does Ino. Naruto sighed. Looks like in less than a year Konoha will be losing 4 genin and 2 jonin. He muttered. Kurenai nodded. She was scared of leaving all she knew, but she also knew that the next time the council sent Anko out on a mission of their choice, her lover wouldn't be coming back alive. XX. Ino smiled as the vines acted like a puppy as she petted them. Anko was smirking. The hubby style of taijutsu was working well with the blonde and her plant abilities. Thus far they discovered that Ino could control plants as well as use them for that strange psi ability that Naruto talked about. Shino had spent a couple hours teaching Ino how to talk to her inner plant and the girl had used the vines like Anko used the shadow snake hand jutsu. She also used seeds like shuriken, and Anko had been surprised when a seed was flicked at her and suddenly she was trapped in spider-like plant that bound her tightly. Hey, who thought you were weak as an idiot? Anko said as they sat resting after Ino had learned the first tier of the snake style of taijutsu. Ino shrugged. I want to be stronger to help Naruto. She said. Shino had stayed on to be used as practice dummy and make suggestions after his meditation time with Ino had passed. Your family's natural affinity with plants helps. I would almost say it is a bloodline, except your mother and father are the first in your clan to open a flower shop. I know that in our Kekkei Genkei deals with our mind-walking abilities. Which seems to have been, as Naruto-kun put it, mutated with me. She sighed. What do you mean? Anko asked. This morning I heard mom and dad talking. Thing is, they were in the store and I heard them as if they were right next to me. Ino said. I also can't seem to get enough sun. Ino said, and Anko realized the girl was sitting in the sun while she and Shino had been in the shade. It's like I'm absorbing it like a plant. Ino said. Do you feel stronger? Anko asked. A bit. More energized. Ino admitted. Write down what you notice. Shino said. That way you can speak with Dr. McCoy when he arrives. Ino nodded. She'd liked the big blue furry mutant when they met in Wave. What else have you noticed? Anko asked. Well, now that I'm outside, it's like I hear a slight buzz, like one of Shino's bugs was dancing around my head. I focus on it and I hear voices, some are muffled like I'm hearing it like I was underwater. Anko sighed. Your Sai abilities. Out of my league. Just be careful and don't try something without Naruto around. She stood. We'll work on your taijutsu a bit more, then go for a late lunch. Ino stood and was bouncing on the balls of her feet. Shino rose up with a gracefulness that was seen in cats. This is the start of tier 2 of the snake style. Anko said and took a stance and had Ino mimic her. Shino sent a bug off to check on the other members of their team. This is going to be a long month. He thought of all the changes that had taken place since Naruto's arrival, and how many things were answered already. XX. Hyuga Compound. Lord Hiyashi. The branch house members knelt before him. I want you to kill Hinata. He said, his voice cold. She is a traitor to this family and now she is the demon's whore. Her powers could only come from him. The branch members were silent. Any questions? No, Lord Hiyashi. They said and shushined away. Hiyashi looked at the wall painting of him and his wife. Your deception is revealed. Hanabi was saved from your taint. He said and left the room. He had to report to the elders and explain Neji's injuries in detail and how it had happened and what he was doing to correct it. The second day of training was going as badly as the first. Hinata was able to generate heat, but beyond that her powers seemed to have vanished. Naruto dismissed Haku, apologized for the time spent. I'm not sure what to do, Hinata-chan. Your power is similar to two people I know and I don't have a clue as what to do to get you back into the state you were before. We tried physically and Haku spent the last 4 hours insulting you every which way but Sunday. He pulled her into his lap. Are you messing with me? He asked and at her wide-eyed look knew that she wasn't playing. Forget that. Stupid question. He sighed as she leaned against him. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Hinata said softly. And I'm upsetting you and wasting your time along with Haku's. You're not. As I told you before, this takes time to learn. Hell, Mama took more than a decade how to shut off her power, and didn't get a clue until I moved into the mansion. He sighed. I'm not a great teacher and I'm failing you, Hinata-chan. He felt her shake her head against his shoulder. Yes. I mean, this is like having Beast teach Haku jutsus. The pair sat in silence, Naruto rubbing Hinata's back. Naruto caught movement and knowing no one was supposed to be here, managed to BAMF port him and Hinata away and they reappeared on an upper branch of tree to witness 9 Hyuga branch members enter the clearing that was the training field. He lowered Hinata to her feet. Her eyes saw the caged bird, but knew that her father would have removed her access to it. What do you want? Naruto called down to them. They looked up. Their Byakugans active. They didn't say a word, but 2 of them rushed up the trunk of the tree. Looks like a fight. Naruto muttered. Can you do this, Hinata-chan? He asked. She nodded and Naruto leapt from the branch to the 7 on the ground. Hinata took up her stance and met the 2 on the trunk, using gravity to add power to her attack as she landed on another branch, the initial exchange showing no results. On the ground, Naruto was dancing and dodging, experience with Hinata giving him knowledge that the Jukin strikes would incapacitate him for a bit before his healing factor kicked in. And in that time they could kill me and Hinata. He thought, spinning to the side and connected with an elbow strike to the Hyuga's head. He ducked and weaved, avoiding another attack from a fresh opponent. He was having trouble with 7, and they weren't giving him time to prepare. Above, Hinata was fighting 2 members of the branch family. They'd heard how she had badly hurt Neji, the highest-ranking branch family member, and they were blaming her for their embarrassment. She ducked and struck an arm, but while one backed away and used pressure points to undo what she'd done, the other attacked. They kept her on the narrow section of the branch, and Hinata knew she would have to do something. XX. Naruto ducked a strike and came up with a leaping knee strike, smiling mentally at the cracking of the Hyuga's jaw. He turned and felt a strike to his left leg. Shit. He swore as his leg buckled under him. He rolled away as they tried to hit several more strikes, and Naruto was cursing, leaving his weapons at home, and his cards were with his jacket on the other side of the training ground with Hinata's jacket. He rolled several more times and tried to kick one, but the Hyuga laughed and kicked his leg hard. Naruto was cursing their damn family jutsu, and his eyes caught a glance at where Hinata was balanced on the thin part of the branch fighting 2 opponents. Another strike hit his other leg and Naruto couldn't roll as a third strike hit his hip, paralyzing him from rolling. Look at this. Not only do we kill the traitorous whore, we kill the demon as well. One of the Hyuga said with a sneer. Lord Hiashi will reward us for this. Another said. Naruto did the only thing he could think of. He placed his hands on the ground under him and sent energy into it. Papa said it's a good field attack, but I'm at ground 0, this is going to hurt. The blonde thought as the ground took on a red glow. The Hyuga, too smug in their success, didn't realize it. Any last words, demon? One asked, standing over Naruto, hand poised to strike. Just one, Ms. Amy. Naruto gave them a grin that would have made Gambit proud. And what's that, demon? A Hyuga sneered. Boom. The ground exploded. XX. Hinata ducked and weaved, and when the explosion happened she looked down to see where Naruto was covered in smoke and raining chunks of dirt and rock. Die, bitch. The Hyuga she was facing lunged. Hinata had no choice. She stepped off the branch and her hand caught it. She swung up the other side and kicked the branch family member in the middle his back, hard, and it sent him flying off the tree. Hinata landed in a crouch and looked at the other member, who glared at her with hate filled by Akugan eyes. You will die, demon whore. He snarled. Arrogant as my former father. Hinata said, and she leapt from the branch to a lower one. She tried summoning her power like she had when she faced Neji, yet she could only make the air around her hot. Her eyes scanned down and she saw Naruto laying on his back several feet away. One of the Hyuga branch members was dead, another was missing his legs. The remaining 5 were slowly getting to their feet, their heads ringing. Hinata spun away, closer to the tree trunk, as she'd seen the branch member from above dive down to attack. Their fight was a dance of Jukin strikes and blocks. The branch member seemed surprised at how strong Hinata was. You can't have gotten stronger. You were nothing more than a failure. The man said. That is the lie my father and the council have made themselves believe. I was never weak. I was hesitant to hurt my family, and in the end I allowed you all to bully and walk all over me. Hinata said. But I have someone who loves me, and I will not go down without a fight for what I believe in. Love. You and the demon. Hinata shook her head. Naruto never has been and never will be a demon. He held the Kyuubi, but it's dead now. Lies. I'll kill you, and your lies will die with you. The man spat and lunged again. Hinata was fighting to a stalemate, hoping that someone would have heard the explosion and come to check things out. The branch family member realized this and laughed. Shame that no one will come. Today all patrols are handled by the Hyuga. Hinata snarled as she doubled her attack, not seeing her strikes were leaving burn marks where she touched. The branch family member flinched at this and fought to get some room where his longer reach would help. Sweat was forming as the air around the pair became hotter. Hinata's strikes were coming faster. You are in the range of my divination. She intoned, and the branch family member realized all the information they had on Hinata had been wrong. Sadly, the first strike had already landed and his world was getting very numb and filled with pain as his chakra and nerve points were literally being burned out. XX. Naruto groaned as his healing factor kicked in. Note to self: don't ever do that again while laying on the ground. he thought as he rolled onto his side and pushed himself into a seated position. For the Hyuga. Naruto's eyes snapped to where one of the Hyuga had regained his feet and was staggering towards him, his clothes showing the tale of being further away from the blast zone, but catching some of it. Naruto got his knees under him, happy his leg was working again. Die Demon. The branch member had his palm raised to send a Juken strike right at Naruto's head. Get away from my boy. A heavy southern accented Japanese female voice yelled and the branch member was lifted off the ground and carried high into the air by a blur of green, yellow and brown. Mama. Naruto watched as his adoptive mother carried the branch family member into the sky and into the clouds. Hey mon enfant. Naruto's head snapped around and he saw his father. Pick a card, any card. Gambit said as he charged and threw the card at another member who was sneaking up on Naruto. Naruto grinned. Hey papa. Gambit smiled, his eyes looking up into the tree. Hinata. Naruto said and pushed himself to his feet, his healing factor repaired the damage from the Juken strike. His eyes took in one of his girlfriends destroying the Hyuga branch family members with her burning touch, the man fell and impacted with the ground, breaking his neck. Hinata's eyes searched and found Naruto, she smiled and he returned it. Snicked. Naruto turned to see a branch member get impaled on 6 shiny metal claws. Hey Wolverine. Whiskers. The Canadian said dropping the corpse and pulling out a cigar, he lit it. You can't stay out of trouble. Naruto shrugged at his former mentor. I don't go looking for it, it just finds me. Logan grunted. A new voice interrupts. Like that could be either you being like Gambit's adopted son, or the fact you're an ex-man. Naruto smiled as Kitty phased through another awake Hyuga, causing the man to think he saw a ghost and wet himself. She looked at the man disgusted and wrinkled her nose. Like, totally gross, she said and kicked the man in the face knocking him out. Naruto looked at his family. Who else is here? Remy LeBeau smiled at his adopted son. Jeannie, Kane, Hank, Stormy, your 2 petite amies, and 2 special guests and of course, the Wagners. Naruto noticed several names missing. What aren't you telling me papa? He asked as Hinata joined him on the ground, carefully walking down the tree while Naruto greeted his family. Remy sighed. We had some trouble, before we came. We lost, Cyclops. Naruto blinked. What? Logan made a sound. Apocalypse and his horsemen were making things difficult for the Avengers. Kitty said. We got a call for help as we were getting ready to come help you, that's what took us a day. Just tell him already. Logan snarled. Shuga. Naruto looked and lunged into the waiting arms of his adopted mother. Rogue held him. Olasike went straight at Big Lips while the rest of us were trying to stop the newest incarnation of the horseman. She stroked his hair. Who were they this time? Naruto asked, knowing that the immortal mutant had no problems upgrading mutants or fallen heroes to do his bidding. Hulk was War. Naruto shuddered. Famine. Famine was Polaris and Pestilence was Sunfire. Naruto shuddered at the 3 names revealed. 2 were former X-Men. And Death. We Dawn. No. Gambit said. He never showed himself to us, and left before we could find out who it was. Wait. 3 horsemen and Apocalypse leveled the Avengers. One of those horsemen was the Hulk Kid. Wolverine said. My bones are still aching from trying to stop him. So, Cyclops is dead. Naruto said sadly. He thought of the man who taught him basic mechanics and tactics. Who, while a bit stiff, was an uncle that he could go to for advice. Chuck retreated after. He's off to the shear. Logan said. But, Naruto processed it. Warren and Betsy have run off to Japan to escape their pain. Bishop's thrown himself into his police work. Most the others have scattered. Naruto shook his head. Then he noticed Hinata looking at him in his mother's arms. Mama, I would like you to meet Hinata. He said, realizing that 3 of the adults hadn't met one of his girlfriends. Hello. Hinata said, giving a bow. Ain't she precious? Rogue said. Hello Hinata. She is a cute one non. Gambit said from behind his wife. Hey, where's Ino? Kitty tossed in and Naruto wondered if he could smack his aunt before she phased. Rogue's eyes fixed on her son. Yes, what is this I hear you having 4 girlfriends? Naruto groaned, even as his father laughed and Logan snorted. He looked at Hinata who seemed to be frozen in place by his mother's arm over her shoulders. Maybe I should have let the Hyuga kill me. He thought, wondering where the others are. Naruto did the only thing he could think of. Bamf. The yell of his mama sounded all over Konoha. Naruto Uzumaki Labo. Get back here now. Rogue yelled in English. At the Hokage's tower, Sarah and Laura heard the yell and shared a grin while Jean and Storm chuckled. Beast, who was speaking with the Hokage, smiled. I fear our young friend might not make the Chunin exams if his mother has her way. Hiruzen Sarutobi shook his head. Naruto's family had arrived and he wondered if his village would be standing afterwards. His eyes went to the one they introduced his cane and shuddered as he remembered the report filed by Kurenai about the man's raw power. I fear the civilians are in for a rude awakening. Care to speak now, Shuga? Rogue asked at the trussed-up form of her son. You know, Mama, this could be considered child abuse. Naruto fired back. Rogue caught him. In fact, she caught him in mid-leap and flew away from the village while he howled about her cheating. Remy looked on and smirked as he shuffled a deck of cards. Ye know, my boy, the share just don't play lightly. No shit. Rogue flicked him across the back of the head. Watch her language. Ye ain't old enough to curse like. She paused and her eyes fell on Logan entering the room. Naruto smirked. Who do you think I learned my best words from? The Wolverine, who had faced the Hulk, and walked away from it, looked up seeing his longtime teammate coming towards him. Stripes, I don't like that look in your eyes, darlin'. And Wolverine fled, knowing talk was futile at this point in time. Gambit smirked and turned to see Naruto shedding the ropes and rubbing his wrists. So, Konoha, Remy said. I want to go home. Naruto said. You got a year. Remy reminded the blonde. Naruto sighed and proceeded to tell his father all that had transpired since his return. He held nothing back. Gambit laid the cards on the table between them and started to play solitaire. Yay, no, you keep forgettin'. Naruto looked at the man who rescued him a decade ago and was now his adoptive father. Never mess with the X-Men. Gambit said, in a very feral look came over his face. XX. Rogue looked at Hinata, one of the 4 girls that had laid claim to her son. She watched as the girl, with the aid of her sensei, was going through a series of motions. The Hyuga bodies had been collected by Anbu and the Hokage had not been happy. You don't look happy, Stripes. She looked at Logan, who was puffing on a cigar, their chase long forgotten in Rogue's desire to see what her adoptive son had been through. Not, she said, her accent thicker when she was upset. My son was attacked in a village that he came back to defend. Logan nodded. He had thought sending the kid back to Konoha alone was a bad idea, but it seemed that the X-Men and their allies were facing a run of surprise villains, and no one could be spared for more than a day or two. Think the kid will like the new codename. Rogue smiled at this. You said the only reason you gave him solitaire was due to him mimicking Remy's power first. Logan puffed a moment on his cigar. I know, but he's matured since then. Logan watched the young girl. So, kid's got a harem. Your healing factor and adamantium skeleton won't save ya if ya push that topic. Rogue warned. They train kids to kill, to hold in their emotions. Logan always liked the culture, but this part of it he hated. He watched for a moment. I will say Whiskers got himself an eye. Rogue growled. I swear Remy is gonna get my boot up his backside. What's bothering you, darlin'? The Canadian mutant asked. I want to bring him home. Especially with all that's happened recently and all that we've learned. Jean will help the girl understand her powers. What I want to know is if Sinister has been messing around down here, what else has he done? Rogue nodded. With the professor. Leavin' to go to the shear and Scott dead, Rogue sighed. We've been going from one fight to another lately. I want my son home. She said. I don't care about what Remy agreed to a decade ago. Wolverine agreed. If the Hyuga were anything to judge, the kid would be well off to wash his hands of it. XX. Ino sighed as she stretched. Shino had gone to work with his father on their family's hives, and Anko was called away to the Hokage's office. She was relaxing while laying on the grass. It was then that the grass told her someone was approaching. She closed her eyes and popped them open, hearing a snikt. She rolled and looked to see X-23 wearing her X-Men uniform. Well, look at what I found laying on the ground. Scream for me, Frail. The dark-haired mutant snarled and leapt, her claws exposed and ready to do some major damage to Ino. XX. Hokage's office. So the Hyuga have tried to kill Naruto and Hinata today. Anko said and sighed. We don't need this. The kid's ready to bolt as is. Hiruzen sighed. As I was explaining to Mr. McCoy here, Naruto's whole team is mutants and they need help. Anko looked and smiled seeing the blue-furred X-Man. Next to him was a red head with a body that was a knockout. Thank you. Wah, you're Jean, Anko said and the woman smiled. I see my little sunshine has been telling tales. Anko snickered. When he's not trying to balance two girlfriends. The Hokage sighed. I want you to gather a team to raid the Hyuga compound. They have gone too far this time. The Hokage said. If I may. Beast said. Would it be possible for some of our number to be included in this raid? Anko's grin became feral. I was hoping for it. The Hokage shuddered as Beast and Anko named an assault team and the Hokage wondered if it would be nicer to send Anbu after the Hyuga. Jean smiled at him. It would be nicer, but you'd have several bored X-Men then. And look at this way, you don't have to pay us for this. She said. XX. Naruto entered the office 10 minutes later with Hinata, Kurenai, Rogue, Logan and Remy. He looked at everyone gathered and his brow furrowed. Where's Ino and Laura? He asked. Anko shrugged. Sent them a messenger pigeon when I sent yours. And Anbu appeared. Lord Hokage. There's a fight taking place at Training Ground 19. One of the outsiders and the Yamanaka girl are fighting. Damn it. Naruto vanished with a BAMF. Two figures that the blonde hadn't noticed stepped further into the office. Can we help any? Dat, are you sit and watch? Remy said as the man pulled his cowl over his face. Never leave a man behind. A pair of blue eyes stared back at Gambit. Besides, we didn't come all the way here to sit still. The woman said. XX. Training ground. Not so easy is it bitch. Ino said as the blades of grass grew and tried to trap X-23. The feral mutant slashed the grass ropes, spinning and leaping. Ino however wasn't sitting still either. She grabbed a dandelion and smirked. This isn't the whip I wanted, but, desperate times. She said and focused. A long whip emerged from the dandelion and grew spikes. Take this. Crack. Laura winced as the plant whip scored against her arm and looked to see it had cut in. Her healing factor kicked in and she sliced at the whip, but missed. Ino's other hand made a motion and more grass grew to grab X-23. While Laura was avoiding the grass, Ino back flipped into a tree and focused her will. Several of the branches began to move and grew several feet before they went to attack, each a wicked-looking spike aimed at impaling X-23. Ino smirked. You ain't so tough now. I'll wear your guts as garters. X-23 hissed as she slashed and dodged the attacks. She sported several wounds as Ino's attacks were very quick. She leapt and a blade of grass became as hard as diamond and impaled her thigh. Ag. X-23 landed in a crouch. Ino smirked then her eyes unfocused as she heard something in her head. She's not worthy of Naruto. I'll beat her and show him what I can do. Ino staggered as she heard Laura's thoughts. They stopped when Laura removed the grass blade from her thigh. I am so worthy of Naruto. Ino hissed and Laura looked at her, her brow furrowed. How? I. Both of you stop this right now. Naruto had arrived and saw a shaken Ino and X-23 with wounds healing in a crouched position. Naruto. Both said looking ashamed. What am I to do with you two? He asked not approaching. It was my fault. Ino said. Laura was helping me spar and we got carried away. Naruto looked around the training ground. Carried away is one way to look at it. He said. Come, we have to get to the Hokage's office. The Hyuga tried to kill Hinata and I earlier. We're making plans for retaliation. Ino hopped down from the tree, landing next to Laura who stood, her healing factor dealing with the wounds suffered. What do you mean attacked? Ino asked and Laura looked worried. Both girls approached and started to search the blonde for wounds, both knowing that his healing factor dealt with it, but they both worried regardless. I am fine, he said, as is Hinata. He said and they both stopped their inspection. Now, let's go. He took their arms about to Bamfport, when he spoke again. And you can explain, in great detail why you both were fighting and not lie about a training going extem. He said and they both knew that was a talk they'd like to look forward to at a later date, like never. What a boring night. Yeah, but guard duty always is boring. Nothing ever happens around here. Well, there was that incident years ago with the Kumo ambassador, but since then. THOOM. What was that? Nothing. Probably some idiot at the training grounds again. THOOM. That sounded awfully close for the training grounds. Yeah, both activated their Byakugan. The giant form that appeared before them out of nowhere had them wet themselves. Losers. Kane Marco, the unstoppable juggernaut, sneered as he finger flicked the pair of guards, sending them crashing into the gate. Kitty Pryde, the untouchable Shadowcat, shook her head. Like, you can't tap them. That was a tap, Kane said. Behind him was the assault force. Strom, Wolverine, Beast came up, dropping the guards they'd encountered. From the other direction came Nightcrawler, Scarlet Witch, and Nocturne, who deposited more guards. 2 cloaked figures were with the Wagners. Where are the others? Wolverine asked. Solitaire is taking Marrow, X-23, Rogue, Gambit, and Jean in the back way. Nocturne said. She had her father's appearance with fur and smiled. Worried uncle. About Whiskers. Damn right. Wolverine said. The cloaked figures stepped forward. The Hokage will arrive soon with Hinata, Ino, and the others. Storm sighed. Kane, take the gate. Everyone else, stick to the plan, knock them out only. She said, looking at Wolverine, who shrugged. He'll live. The gruff Canadian said, towing one of the unconscious Hyuga. Knock, knock. The Juggernaut said. Avon. The gate to the Hyuga compound crumpled at the tap that it received from the unstoppable Juggernaut. Oh, look. They left the door open. Kitty sighed as she phased through the wall. You're too loud. XX. Back of the Hyuga estate. You sure about this, Suga? Rogue asked. Yeah. Hiyashi's rooms are back here. We get in and take him and the elders out. The branch family members should give up then. Naruto said as he finished applying the explosive tags. Why are you wasting time with that, when you can just do this? Gambit asked, charging a playing card. It's called saving energy for later. Marrow chuckled as she was juggling a pair of bone swords she had pulled from her ribs. The curved blades looked very dangerous. Laura looked at the guards they knocked out, bound and gagged. She popped her claws with the familiar snicked. They took the gate. She heard the loud crash. Stand back, Naruto said and nodded at Jean, who covered them with a TK shield as the back wall exploded, keeping the debris away from them. Go, Rogue ordered and flew in, her fists connecting with the guards patrolling the halls. Gambit stepped in and nailed another guard with a charged card. Here you go, aces and eights, full house. Jean used her telekinesis to shove branch family members away while X-23 and Marrow were not as caring and left bloody heaps where they passed. Naruto checked rooms and would put tags on the doors, sealing the occupants inside with the barrier seals the Hokage had given him. Solitaire. He saw X-23 standing over an older man. Seems the elders are hiding back this way. The guards are trying to delay us. Naruto nodded and, remembering the map Hinata had drawn out, he vanished with a BAMF of his own. I hate when he does that. Marrow growled. I like it. X-23 said. Wonder what would be like. Ah, didn't want to hear that. Rogue growled as she put a Hyuga through the floor. Gambit smirked and bashed a couple of branch members with his quarterstaff. Dad, my boy, he said low so as not to draw his wife's ire. Jean heard and giggled. The others are making their way to the chamber. They left Kane in the courtyard. She said after checking with the others. What about the old man? Gambit asked. She focused. On his way. Seems he's having a hard time convincing Hinata and Ino to wait. They're worried about Naruto. Ain't we all, Suga? Ain't we all? Rogue said. XX. Wolverine slashed and kicked. He hated the Jukin strikes the White Eyes were hitting him with. While most of his teammates could avoid them easier, he had to get close to be effective. He bet if he didn't have his healing factor, he would be out of action with some of the hits they'd connected with. And Whisker's little girlfriend knows this. Note to self, see what she can fully do once we get her in the danger room. Logan thought. He also decided that he would have the kids' team outfitted with standard X-Men body armor. He paused and watched as Kurt teleported all over the place, the confines of the corridors becoming black from all the brimstone he was leaving behind. Kitty, Wanda and TJ were fighting as a unit. Storm was blowing the Hyuga around with gale force winds. He turned and saw their two friends and he shook his head as the red, white and blue shield hummed through the air and pinballed off several Hyuga, knocking them out. The other figure flirted around and zapped Hyuga with stingers, and Logan admitted it was nice to have them around. We're heading in, he said. Marco, secure the courtyard till the Hokage arrives. Logan ordered. Beast flipped over and kicked a Hyuga, sending him flying. I shall remain with our erstwhile comrade and Yeah, Logan said as he headed in, the Jukin strike's effects having vanished thanks to his healing factor. Storm remained behind as well, the close confines of the estate wouldn't do her any good. Elf, witch, half-pint, elfling, let's go, he said to the Wagners and Shadowcat. Their guests followed. So much for a vacation, the 4-inch woman said, resting on her companion's shoulder. She wore a black and yellow suit that exposed her midsection, the gossamer wings hanging down her back. Like we ever really get or need one. The blue cowl with an A on it said, turning to her, the blue eyes sparkling with mirth. Yeah, you're just a workaholic, the sprite said. Get a move on, Logan called over his shoulder. XX. Both groups reached the sealed doors at the same time. Where's the kid? Logan asked. In there, Marrow said. He ported there when he learned where they were. The door's got a seal on it and we can't hear in there. Wolverine sighed. Kid's going to settle it himself. Rogue growled deeply. It impressed X-23 and Wolverine. And a moment later the Mississippi native reared back and slammed her fist into the sealed door. The door, to the surprise of many, didn't budge, but a small crack appeared. "Yeah, gotta to be shittin' me," Rogue muttered. X-23 slashed the sealed doors and made a scratch. "Whatever those tags are, they are tough." Jean was standing, hand to her head, and her eyes were closed. "Jeannie?" Logan asked. "He's got the elders gathered. He's not happy. Rogue, you and Gambit have got to teach him swearing isn't. Save it, Suga. If Naruto's swearin', that means." Gambit put an arm around her shoulder. "Means he ain't ussin' his powers. He be keepin' his temper despite ragin' at him." Rogue leaned against her husband and sighed. This was how the Hokage found them nearly 5 minutes later. "Where's Naruto?" he asked in concern. Logan jerked a thumb at the sealed door. "I believe the old farts in there are going to need a diaper change when the kid gets done with him, bub." The Hokage wondered what was going on in there, but he saw the kanji mark of the seal he had given Naruto and knew no sound in or out, and the room was sealed tightly. Shaking his head, he ordered the ninja he brought with them to gather the Hyuga clan up and take them to the cells beneath the tower. "Naruto will do the right thing," the man with the shield said. Hiruzen looked at him. "How do you know this? And again, who are you?" The sprite on his shoulder chuckled. "Nice not being recognized, isn't it, Steve?" "Hush, Janet," the man said and turned his cowl-covered head towards the Hokage. "First, Naruto isn't one to kill out of rage, he's threaten and maybe leave them with a limp. And secondly, I'm Steve Rogers, and to the rest of the world I am called Captain America. The original Boy Scout. The lady on my shoulder is Janet Pym, she's the Wasp." She leapt to the air and became her normal size. "Spoilsport," she said. The Hokage looked at the door and was wondering once more about Naruto's life and the strange people he'd pulled into his family over the years he'd been gone. The council chamber was a panic room. The elders thought they'd be safe, but the slamming of the doors had them spin about and come face to face with the demon, and the young man looked pissed off, and they knew he had good reason. Why you can't be here?" one of the elders said, pointing a finger at Naruto. His head to the side, his blue-on-black eyes looked at them as if studying a large stake and he was the predator. "Well, that's false, because here I am," Naruto finally said. "We will have you executed for." Another tried to bluster, but Naruto held up a finger to silence them. "You see, I am here legally. By order of the Hokage," Naruto said as he pulled out a couple of copper coins and proceeded to flip them over his knuckles in a bored fashion. "You know, I was willing to leave you alone. To ignore you," he said, walking into the middle of the chamber and noticed that the esteemed elders of the Hyuga clan backed up. He smirked. "I was going to leave you to your petty games in the village and was going to take Hinata with me when I left in a year to return to my family." He looked at each of the elders, his eyes landing on Hiashi last. "But you just had to be a bunch of. You had to try and kill her and me. We would do no such thing," a member said, but Naruto saw him look to Hiashi with a nervous twitch. "Really?" Naruto said with a mock frown. "Then I guess the branch family members that we didn't kill and were interrogated by Ibiki and Inoichi were mistaken." Naruto saw the nervous swallow of several members. Hiashi remained like stone. "I believe they are," he said. Naruto gave a bark of laughter. "You're one cold bastard. You disown your daughter. You try and kill her and you lie, very poorly I might add." Naruto looked at the seal he'd placed on the door. "Well, We're going to be alone until I remove that seal. You old farts might want to be talkin'. A seat. Naruto's accent kicked in a bit and his eyes seemed to flash. And I might leave you alive to stand trial before the Hokage. Naruto shook his head as several of them found seats, one even sitting where he was on the floor. Hiashi remained impassive and Naruto quirked an eyebrow at him. You can't do anything, monster. Hiashi said. Really? Huh. Naruto said. The copper coin took on a slight red glow and he flipped it towards Hiashi, who moved as it hit the floor in front of him and exploded. Guess that's anything then. Naruto said with a shrug. For too long you Sanaa bitches have held a seal over the heads of those who you thought were beneath you. You sit upon your padded chairs and sneer at make decrees to protect your own worthless wrinkled asses, and all you've done is ruin lives of those who could have made this clan greater than it's ever been. Naruto looked at Hiashi. And now, it's all over. No great Hyuga legacy, no Hyuga Grand Counselor to the Hokage. Now, you're going to burn, and I think Hinata-chan will dance on the ashes. One of the elders actually found courage and attacked. Naruto had been waiting, and avoided the Juken strike and struck with the force of a mule and jabbed his thumb into the man's throat, dropping him to the ground gagging. That's with my thumb. Trust me, you don't want me to start using my power. I do that, none of you will leave here alive. Hiashi scoffed. Naruto looked at him and shook his head. You know, you're supposed to the wise leaders of the Hyuga clan. Tell me, if I was the demon you claim I am, don't you think pissing me off is the last thing you want to do? Several more of the elders looked nervous. Naruto. Jin's voice filled his mind. Oh, hey Jin, I'm fine, and before you ask, I haven't killed any of them, yet. Naruto sent back. Not funny. The Hokage is here. Jin thought to him. Can I have 10 more minutes? Naruto asked. Number. Your parents are out here, you better open that door before Rogue has a meltdown. Naruto sighed. Fine. Ruin my fun. He felt Jin break her telepathic connection and he looked at the elders a moment before he reached behind him. Naruto broke the seal with the gesture the Hokage had shown him and the seal turned gold then dissolved. No sooner it did that, than his mother kicked the door down. Unfortunately there was an elder kneeling before it, gagging from Naruto's attack, and the poor SOB was sent crashing with the remains of the door. Naruto. He didn't know who reached him first. Mero, X-23, Hinata, Ino, or his mother. He saw his father's red eyes sparkling with mirth as the 4 girls and his mother all talking at once scolded him for going off on his own. The Hokage and his Anbu surveyed the room. Take them to Ibiki. The Hokage ordered. He looked on, as Naruto was getting scolded, and smirked along with the others. Naruto saw the familiar white-winged blue cowl-covered head. Cap. Help. Steve Rogers, Captain America, took one look and shook his head. Janet Pym next to him outright laughed. The other X-Men all smirked. Gambit, finally taking pity on his adopted son, pulled him out of there. Share. He needs to give his report to the Hokage. Remy LeBeau said to his wife. He looked at her and then grinned. Ya can scold him after. Papa. Naruto yelled in English at the betrayal his adopted father, who shrugged. Rogue put an arm around her child's shoulder and smiled. Naruto saw no help from anyone and knew that the night was going to be a long one. XX. Namikaze House. Naruto woke with sunlight peeking in past the drapes. Last night after the report to the Hokage, he'd led his family back to the Namikaze estate and shown them rooms his shadow clones had been cleaning since the attack at the training ground. He didn't escape the lecture from his mother about the stupidity of running off alone, and of course Logan backed it up, promising a workout the next day. He stretched and stopped as an arm wrapped around him from behind. Cammy, please tell me this is a dream. He thought and looked over his shoulder slowly to see familiar black hair and just knew Logan was going to kill him, even if this wasn't his fault. Screw what Logan will do, Mama's gonna rip me a new one. The blonde thought. He tried to lift the arm, but it curled tighter and he felt a face press into his neck. Stay put. A sleepy voice growled. Laura-chan. He whispered. I need to get up. No, you don't. She growled, and Naruto knew that this could get very dangerous, and when your bedmate had adamantium claws in her hands and feet, one had to be very careful. Even with his healing factor, pain was a harsh bitch he didn't want to deal with. I gotta pee. He tried. No, you don't. She said, and her warm breath on his neck was having a reaction. Logan's going to kill me, he said in the same low voice. At this he felt her smile into his neck, and before he could say anything else she rolled him onto his back and straddled his waist. He noted that she was wearing one of his shirts he knew was missing from his dresser. You're trying to kill me or get me killed, aren't you? He asked with a smile, and he knew she wasn't wearing anything under the shirt. What a way to go, she teased. She put a hand on either side of his head and leaned over him. Why are you playing with them? She asked. I'm not playing, Naruto said. Laura looked down at him, her dark eyes held a blaze in them. You know I've wanted no other but you, she said. Naruto looked up at her, his blue on black eyes taking in her own eyes. I know. Why aren't I enough? She demanded. I didn't want to start something with you and then up and leave. It wouldn't be fair to you. But finding Nookie with those two. Watch it, Naruto warned. Kunoichi. Laura finished with the alternate word to the one she was thinking. With them is better. I thought you were coming back, or are you going to stay here and make fat ninja babies? No, I'm not staying. Then why? Laura demanded, and Naruto knew she was showing him her vulnerability. I can't give you an answer that will make you happy. But I am drawn to them, as I am drawn to you and Sarah. Laura hissed. Why? I can't explain it in words. You all mean something special to me. What if we demand you chose one of us? Laura said. Naruto looked at her and she saw it in his eyes. I can't. It would be like asking me to rip my heart out. Laura wanted to tell him to forget the others, but she saw he was right. It would cripple him not to care for all of them. She leaned down and kissed him, lightly, but it became possessive. She pulled back and smirked down at him. Fine. Have your little harem, she growled. But you will not add another one, or I will kill them and castrate you. He nodded, knowing she would do it. And you better believe it when I say that I'm not leaving until I've bagged and tagged your. Naruto gulped, wondering how he was going to avoid getting killed and still get prepared for the Chunin exam finals. Well, dodging Logan will be good practice, he thought before his mind went blank as Laura kissed him again and ground their pelvises together, making another part of his body demand attention and handicapping the blood flow, and he realized she had nothing under his shirt. Hinata looked at the mutant named Mero, who glared at her. Hinata wasn't shy like she used to be and glared right back. Jean sighed. Mero, if you can't work with her then. I'm here. Just get the little princess to start. The bone generator snarled. Jean looked at Hinata and gave the girl a smile. I want you to try mediation. Naruto told me you activated your power before, but the trigger is being difficult, Mero said. Hinata sighed, but Jean continued, I will mind link with you and we'll go through the memories of the time your power activated. Then we'll work in your mind before we try the physical world. Mero snorted. While you two mind walk, I'll be guarding your bodies. After you figure out what you're doing, then we'll have us a little spar princess. Hinata really didn't like the girl, but she was important to Naruto and thus, she would put aside her dislike. But I won't be a pushover for her. Good. Hinata blinked and turned to Jean, who nodded and smiled. I'm a telepath. As we learn about your powers, I will also teach you to design mental defenses. Naruto took to building them like a duck to water, Jean told her. Hinata smiled at the mental image she conjured and Jean grinned. If you two are done playing patty cake, get a step in. I think we should do this inside. Jean shook her head. Her powers are fire-based. And since we don't have a danger room here, outdoors are the best option just in case of accidents. The redhead told the bone generator. Whatever. Don't mind her. She'll warm up to you in time. She's rough around the edges, Jean said telepathically. Now then, let's get comfortable, Jean said, and her and Hinata sat in a lotus position across from one another. Jean put her hands on Hinata's. Breath in, breath out. Listen to the sound of my voice. Close your eyes and continue to breath, Jean instructed. Mero had a pair of her forearm bones and was using a knife to carve them. Her eyes not on the meditating pair, but on the surrounding area. She might act tough, but she knew the white-eyed girl meant something to Naruto and thus, meant something to her. And I'll be damned before anything happens to anything that's his, she thought. XX. Training Ground 10. Naruto dodged and then back-flipped as Logan came at him with adamantium claws swinging. The reason he wasn't attacking was he'd woken to found his hands handcuffed very uncomfortably against his back and Logan telling him he'd gotten lax. Move your boy. Logan snarled as he was working on Naruto's dodging. You've come to rely on those clones and porting far too much. Naruto had to agree. At least I haven't used my powers. He thought as he bent backwards and kicked up and cursed at how damn hard the adamantium-laced skull was. His healing factor took care of it and he leapt in the air and used Logan's head as a springboard. Naruto landed and rolled. As this beat on Naruto Day? He asked. I do have an exam to prepare for. I'm sure you do, and when I'm done with you you'll be ready. Naruto kicked and ducked and looked at Logan. I had my own way. I know what this is. You missed me and decided to make up all the missed danger room sessions in one go. Logan gave him a feral grin and Naruto shook his head. This. He leapt in the air and twisted and before he landed he had his arms in front of his body. Logan winced at hearing Naruto pop his shoulder back in and had to admit the kid had the balls. I'm just glad the damn fox didn't give him my claws. The Wolverine thought as Naruto then rushed him, which surprised Logan. Kid's gone loco. Hands are still bound and he's not allowed to use his ninja tricks and his powers. Logan saw as the blonde fainted left and he went to slash right, but the blonde did go left and brought his hands up, the adamantium claws slicing the cuffs off and Logan cursed as Naruto spun and connected with an elbow, tagging his nose hard. Naruto with a series of kicks drove Logan back. Off to the side Steve Rogers was watching with Kurt, Wanda, Janet, and Kane. Kids got moxie. Kane Marco grunted as he leaned against the tree watching. Like the others he was dressed in civilian garb. Now you see why I want him for the new Avengers. Steve said looking at Janet. Naruto without his powers or his ninja tricks is able to give Logan a match. Granted the old canonical head is holding back, but still, Naruto is giving him hell. And the fact Logan's skeleton is laced with adamantium, Kurt said looking on as Naruto landed several blows, but Logan landed more. I swear Hair Logan is enjoying this. Wanda sitting next to her husband nodded. Logan has missed the sparring sessions with Naruto. She said. Janet looked around. Hey, where are Remy, Rogue and the others? My sister wanted to see Ino in action, so she has taken her with Talia and Laura to another training ground. Storm, Dr. McCoy and Remy are scouting around before meeting the council. Janet shook her head as Kurt explained to his wife where the others were. Jean and Mero are helping Hinata learn about her powers. Kurt continued. And as you can see. That was my favorite shirt. They turned to see Naruto in a shredded shirt and looking at Logan. Toughen up kid. You can play dress up with the girls later. Logan snarled and came in claws swinging. Naruto ducked and dodged. But Logan. Kane shook his head from where he sat. The kid's healing factor was working overtime as he got several hits from the claws. Kane knew that even with his invulnerability they hurt like a bitch. I take it this is about the runt finding his little girl in the blonde's bed this morning. Kane said looking at the others. Kurt snickered as he'd heard Logan's growl down the hall and Laura's bare feet running the hallway back to her room and the door slamming before Naruto's wake up. XX. Gambit stood on the roof of the council meeting room and listened as the council spoke of the actions against the Hyuga. He shook his head in disgust that they wanted to punish Naruto by pulling him from the tournament and put some boy named Sasuke in. Gambit was flipping the cards in his hands absent-mindedly as he listened to these people badmouth his son. He heard the doors open and knew the Hokage had arrived with Storm and Beast. Showtime. He thought before leaping down and swinging in the window, kicking a root Anbu in the face. Gambit smirked at the council who looked at him. Am I late? The Hokage chuckled and shook his head. Actually Mr. LeBeau. Ms. Munro and Dr. McCoy were very enlightening. Gambit grinned as he lit his cigarette and smirked as the smoke rose to the roof. I'm sure they have been. Gambit said looking at the two people who now ran Xavier's. Storm gave him an impish grin that he knew from their younger days meant trouble for anyone around her. I'm a married man. I'm a married man. Gambit kept thinking of all the trouble he and Storm had gotten into during their days on the street as a pair of happy-go-lucky thieves. What is the meaning of this outrage? One of the council members demanded and the Hokage raised his eyebrow at the man. Hokage-sama. Why are these foreigners here? Another asked, drawing the village leader's attention from annihilating his company councilman from the blatant disrespect. I should be asking all of you about this meeting. The Hokage said. We called this emergency meeting because we have been informed that that Uzumaki is responsible for destroying the Hyuga clan. The Hokage scowled. I want the names as I had a special task force that was sent to take in the Hyuga Council for their assassination orders on Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Labo and Hinata formerly of the Hyuga clan. So the boy led the assault. On my orders. The Hokage said with a smirk, and the council looked shocked. They tried to assassinate my ninja inside the borders of Konoha, as well as the fact they had disowned Hinata months ago. This was a level of treason. He looked at the council and they all noted the word treason. 3 members of the council looked very nervous. And if this was to be a proper council meeting, where are the clan heads for the Yamanaka, Aburame, Akamaiki, Nara and Sarutobi clans? The Hokage noted that the council was there with only the civilian members and members from the lower-ranked clans. The Hokage looked at his former teammates as they sat really close to Danzo. He saw them exchange looks. Now, let's talk about the security leak, since I know the people who comprised the strike team wouldn't have told anyone, nor would anyone in the cleanup team. The Hokage said, his eyes hardening. The 3 X-men present shared a look. It was the same tone they'd heard the professor use with the students when he'd come back from a meeting to find the mansion trashed from a weekend party. XX. Mindscape. This is amazing. Hinata said, looking around. She stopped seeing Jean looking at a memory sphere. What is it? Hinata asked. Jean looked at her. We'll need to sort this all out before we go any further. We need to talk about your past, everything. Jean said, looking at the sphere once more. This is going to be a longer process than I first thought. The telepathic mutant thought. The Chunin exam arena was packed. In one section was Naruto's family. The X-men along with 2 Avengers were all wearing robes over their outfits. Kane ignored the complaining civilians who were behind him as he and Kurt were currently devouring the hot dogs that they had brought with them. Below, Ino and Hinata entered the arena. Both were wearing X-Men style body armor. Ino's hip huggers and battle vest showed her stomach. Her hair was bound by vines and her wrists sported vine bracelets. Next to her, Hinata wore the black and gold armor with the hip huggers and sleeveless crop tank top. Her blue-black hair hung down her back loosely. Both girls had gloves sporting the X symbol given to them by Naruto's mother. Bamf. Naruto had arrived and he had many of the girls in the stands drooling over him. He was wearing X-Men body armor, under his black cargo pants, and his leather duster. He was leaning on his father's quarterstaff and looking around the arena over the top of his sunglasses. Ino let out a whistle and Naruto grinned. Hey Cher. Lookin' good, non. Ino smirked. Look better tonight, she taunted. The time spent around Laura had done things to Ino's self-esteem and she knew that Naruto was going to be hers, she was just going to get there first. Hello Haim. Naruto said, looking at Hinata. He hadn't seen her since Jean took over her training. Hello Naruto-kun. Hinata said, her voice low, sultry. Her eyes hooded as she looked him over in approval and promise. You both look very nice. Shino approached. Hello. Hey Bugs. Naruto said, ready to kick and take names. Indeed. Shino said, and Naruto knew that the Aburame clan was going to be represented well here today. Naruto saw that someone was missing, but there was someone here who didn't belong. What the hell are you doing here, Uchiha? You lost in the preliminaries. HN. Sasuke said, crossing his arms. Your opponent was killed, the council chose me as the replacement, I should have been here anyway. Ibiki appeared. I protest. Naruto said. This bastard didn't win his match. He shouldn't be placed in, and if a replacement was needed then it should be one of Dosu's teammates. This is blatant favoritism of the Uchiha. Settle down. I don't like it any more than you, kid. It's a cheap way to put someone in who doesn't deserve it. Take that back, Proctor. Sasuke said, and to the shock of many activated his Sharingan. Should I be scared, Uchiha? Ibiki said and looked at the competitors. Alright folks, I am the proctor of the 3rd exam of the Chunin exam. When I tell you the fight is over, you stop. If I give you any orders during the match you will obey them or I will kick you from here to the border of Fire Country. What happened to Hayate-san? Hinata asked. He's out on medical, Ibiki said. Ibiki looked over the 12 competitors. Gaara and Hinata stay, the rest of you, scram. Hinata stood with her hands at her side. Ino and Naruto stopped and gave her good luck kisses, ignoring the crowd. Stay safe, Haim. Naruto said. Hinata nodded and as he passed reached out and pinched him. She smiled softly as Naruto turned to give her a look. She gave her an innocent expression. Ino looked at her. You better kick this Gaara's Hinata and come back in one piece. You care. Yes. You are part of whatever it is Naruto's putting together. Hell, I've spent time with Laura and we've come to an understanding. Hinata nodded. Sarah and I have as well. Ino kissed her cheek. You better win. Hinata looked at Gaara and tilted her head to the side. Mother wants your blood. Gaara said. Hinata smiled. That's nice, but it won't be happening. She said. Ibiki looked at the girl and raised his arm. Fight. He ordered and leapt away. The cork on Gaara's gourd exploded off and rocketed at Hinata, who caught it. I hope you don't want this back. She said, and it burnt to ashes in her hand. She took up the gentle fist stance. I am sorry, Gaara-san, but your plans end here. She said and went on the offensive. XX. Naruto stood in the competitor's box and watched as Hinata attacked. Where her hands hit sand, he saw said sand being turned to glass and falling to the arena floor. She did it. Ino said from his left. I knew Jean would be able to teach her. What are you talking about, Dobi? She hasn't hit him. Sasuke sneered. Naruto ignored the so-called prodigy. Temari nearby saw it and shared a look with her other brother Konkuro. The girl was cutting through Gaara's sand defense and rendering the sand unusable to Gaara. What is she? Temari asked aloud. My girlfriend. Naruto answered. Formerly of the Hyuga clan. They lost her because they thought she was weak. Temari looked down in the field. If this is weak, the invasion is going to fail. She's taking Gaara's ultimate defense apart. XX. Hinata let herself go. She could feel the fire and smiled at Gaara when his sand got close, only to be burned away by the heat shield she was creating. So the heat is nearly 700 degrees, but he doesn't know that. She thought as she smacked his sand again and turned it to glass. She was wearing him down and saw the fear in his eyes. She focused and the tips of her fingers now had heat claws and she slashed. The sand wasn't quick enough and Gaara screamed as the wound caught him in the neck. His scream was cut short as not only did the attack cut, but cauterize as well. Hinata didn't slow as she lashed out with the gentle fist ultimate technique modified by her, and as she struck his chakra points she burned them out as she hit Gaara with all 64 strikes. The red head staggered and he could hear in his mind Shukaku screaming in anger, but couldn't do anything as all his paths were burned shut. The Biju could do nothing and the throat wood was lethal. Gaara sank to his knees, his eyes remembering his life. Perhaps, death will be kinder than life. He thought as he collapsed face first to the arena floor. Winner. Hinata. Ibiki said and checked the kid, and saw he was dead. Well, that takes care of the invasion's big weapon we learned about. The head of the interrogation department thought as medics came to remove Gaara's body. She had him with that throat slice, but how did she know about? He looked up as the former Hyuga was pulled into a hug by a certain blonde. Ah, that explains it. XX. In the cage box, the cage was not happy. That girl killed my son. Hiruzen looked at him. Yes, well, the Chunin exams are dangerous, my friend. You remember that one in Suna, where no less than 9 people died in the finals? Yes, of course. Damn it. That slip of a girl just ruined years of planning. Orochimaru thought in the guise of the cage. And I can't use the brat's death as an excuse. XX. Shino and Shikamaru were to fight next. Shikamaru gave up before his fight even started, to the dismay of the crowd and his teammates. Naruto shook his head and patted Shino on the shoulder. You get to face Hinata-chan next round. Hinata snuggled under Naruto's arm as Ino headed to the stadium floor to face Kabuto. Knock 'em dead, Ino came from the stands and many people looked at X-23, who gave them the finger. Naruto chuckled. If they only knew what was to come. He thought his arm around Hinata, who was content not to move from the spot she was in. Flashback. That councilman, Danzo, has betrayed the village. Jean said. They had called the Hokage to the mansion and everyone was pulled in from training. During the exam he's pulled people off the walls in various areas. He's set it up so a man named Orochimaru can invade the village with Oto and Suna. The Hokage scowled and had summoned Ibiki. They planned a counter-attack and Jean filled them what she learned from her surface scan. He also has plans for Naruto, Ino and Hinata. Rogue snarl put Wolverines to shame. I'll kill him. The southern mutant said. Looks like that's going to be a hell of a long line, mama. Naruto said. Hinata had been given orders to remove Gaara and if she was ready. She looked at Jean and nodded. If she wasn't, she would forfeit and take on the winner of the next round. Shino spoke up. I could have my bugs feed on him, but if he's like Naruto's chakra, it will not run out. Naruto had explained his experience with the Kyuubi before it died to his team. We could have Anbu eliminate him before the finals. Reports are he killed Dosu, who was spying on him. The Hokage thought, and before he spoke, Naruto did. Leave him to us, OG-san. If Hinata, Shino or Ino don't get him, I will. The Hokage nodded at this. More plans were put in place. Ibiki had not been happy to be told he'd be in charge of the third exam. Hayate was in critical condition at the hospital. They learned from Jean reading his mind that it was Kabuto who had done the job and who he had talked to. End flashback. Ino was avoiding Kabuto's attacks. The silver-haired teen was using chakra scalpels. Why isn't Ino attacking? Hinata asked. She's a loser, Sasuke said, but was ignored. She's leading him in. Look, Naruto said, and they saw Ino was leading him towards the tree. What does that mean? Lee asked. Naruto smiled. Ino Haim has a few tricks up her sleeve. The weasel is about to find out what they are. On the floor, Ino back-flipped away. You didn't really think I was just going to stand still and let you paralyze me, did you? Ino asked. When she landed, she dropped several seeds and backed up. Kabuto was coming right at her. Sorry, but I need to win. Ino laughed. No you don't, traitor. Kabuto blinked. You don't think we didn't know what you did to Hayate-san? You really suck as a double agent. Ino said, and Kabuto knew he had to kill her now. She knows too much. Ino smirked and made a gesture, and Kabuto was wrapped in vines that exploded from the ground. How? Ino laughed and stayed out of range. Every time I back-flipped I dropped seeds. She said. But that isn't the kicker. She said and made a motion. Kabuto could only watch as the tree came alive and swatted him across the arena, where his body impacted with the wall. The vines burrowed into the wall, keeping him in place as Ino came closer. He saw a branch in her hand and watched as it elongated and became a spear. His mind came across and tossed aside several plans. That wouldn't work, Ino said, and he blinked, his glasses broken and missing. How? Do I know what you're going to say and what you're planning? I'm special. Ino got a serious look and dropped the spear. I was going to kill you, but that thought just earned you a special pain. Ino formed several seals and her hand glowed. 1,000 years of mental torment. And rammed her hand onto Kabuto's forehead. For a moment he did nothing, then he screamed and screamed and screamed. Ibiki appeared next to her. What was that? A family jutsu. His mind is shredding itself. He'll stop screaming soon, his vocal cords will rupture. Ibiki blinked as he remembered Inoichi doing something similar during a torture session. Winner. Ino Yamanaka. She smirked and picked up her spear, planning on using it later. Soon to be Labo. She walked back to the competitor's box. Ibiki shook his head. Kids. Now I know why I never had any. Teenagers scare the shit out of me. Ino arrived and took up the other side of Naruto. They could hear cheering, and all three smirked as X-23, upside down, peeked into the box. Next time. Yes. Ino asked. We sit down and talk. Laura vanished and Naruto looked at Ino. I missed something, didn't I? Ino and Hinata giggled, and the three turned back to watch the fight between Temari of Suna and Konoha's own Rock Lee. She's good, Ino said as the girl kept Lee at a distance with her fan attacks, but then the bushy-browed boy dropped his weights and it was over as he got in close, and Temari was a distance fighter, and a hard hit from Lee knocked her out and gave Lee the win. I've got him next round, Ino said with a gulp. Don't worry, love, Naruto said. Hey loser, get in there so I can kick your hide. Sasuke sneered as he sauntered to the stadium floor. Remember what the Hokage said, Naruto-kun. Hinata reminded him. Yeah, Bamf. Naruto appeared before Ibiki and looked at Sasuke. Many people were interested in this fight. Naruto's family leaned forward, as did Akazekage. Ibiki repeated the rules and raised his arm. Naruto Labo vs Sasuke Uchiha, fight. Naruto looked at his opponent. He had yet to take a stance. So loser. Ready to give up and run away. Sasuke sneered. Naruto an eyebrow. I'm not the one who had the council put him into the finals, despite losing. HN. Sasuke's only response before he went on the attack. Naruto avoided the punches and kicks, his hand still at his side. He sighed. Is this the best you can do? Sasuke snarled. Show me this power you claim to have. No. Naruto continued to dodge and twirled around behind the Uchiha who hit the wall. Several people laughed. You coward. Sasuke snarled. Fight me. Why? You're not worth it. You had to have someone put you in after you were eliminated. Sasuke lunged and tried to kick or hit Naruto. When that didn't work, his hands went through a series of seals and he used a fire jutsu. He spat a series of fireballs, all of which Naruto dodged, and not once did he use any of his powers. Ah! Sasuke threw several shuriken. Naruto leapt high into the air and landed with a flip. You loser. You goddamned freak. Fight me. Fight me, or I swear I'll kill that fat-chested cow you call a mother. Naruto stopped and caught Sasuke's fist. He looked at him. His Atongan eyes became cold. In the stands it was taking Kane, Hank and Remy all they knew to keep Rogue in her seat. I'll kill the little shit. She yelled in English. You won't have to stripes. Logan said. He saw the look in Naruto's eyes. Naruto is gonna show him what happens when you mess with the X-Men. And just how fitting his new codename is. The X-Men knew of Logan's new codename for Naruto and it was more fitting. In the arena, Naruto looked up at the stands, at his family as if asking permission. Kick his, Rogue screamed to her son. Naruto lashed out with a kick to Sasuke's gut which sent him flying across the arena. He skipped like a stone on a pond. Once, twice, 3 times. The only thing stopping him from more was the arena wall. You want me to fight Uchiha? You want to see what I am capable of? Naruto still hadn't taken a stance and Sasuke was painfully pulling himself from the rubble of the wall. The people who had been cheering for him had gone silent. Naruto waited. I'll let you in on a secret, Uchiha. My power. My real power I was born with. It wasn't given to me by the Kyuubi nor was it a jutsu learned. My power is something that my birth father didn't know about. If he did, snorts, I wonder if he would be like so many villagers. You call me a freak. Here Naruto laughed. I've been called that for a long time by flatscans like you. Naruto still hadn't moved and Sasuke drew a kunai and charged. My uncle, a man who helped train me, gave me my new codename this month while I was training. And I must say, it's more fitting than solitaire. For I am not alone. Sasuke raced closer and Naruto looked at him. Konoha knows me by many names, but this one is new. Naruto reached and made a motion as Sasuke was within striking distance. His scream filled the arena and many who were in the village heard it. Naruto's eyes flashed and he looked at Sasuke as his flesh was ripping apart, his blood was burning and his bones were shattering and reforming. My name is Ripper, and you have just been the first besides mutants to see what my real power is. No one ever wondered how I healed so quickly, no matter what was done to me. Naruto said, speaking over Sasuke's screams as Naruto used his power to heal and then shred him once more. My healing factor wasn't a gift from the Kyuubi, it was part of my power keeping me alive after all the beatings this village gave me. Naruto shook his head and he eased up on burning Sasuke's blood and shattering bones. He kept molding the skin and shredding it. I control flesh, blood and bone. I would make a great healer, but also the worst person for anyone to face. He stopped and his head to the side. Sasuke Uchiha was unconscious from the level of pain. Naruto saw that the Uchiha had also shit and pissed his pants. Weak. Naruto said as he used his power to remold Sasuke's bone back to shape and then sealed most of the cuts he created in the boy's flesh. You wanted to see what I could do, yet you pass out before I really get started. Ibiki shook himself from his shock and declared Naruto the winner. The medics rushed to get to Sasuke. Naruto ignored them and looked at the Hokage's booth. That's the last time I pull my punches, old man. He said. Hiruzen nodded and watched as Naruto returned to the competitor's box. The only ones staying near him was his teammates. Akato and Kankuro both forfeited. Both looked very afraid of the possibility of fighting Naruto after what he did to the Uchiha without even laying a hand on him. There was a brief intermission, which Naruto found time to sit with Hinata and Shino across from them. You don't use that power often. The bug user said. Naruto shook his head. I've used it in training, and a couple of times in battle, minor shit. I don't know why I hammered the Uchiha like I did. A snort from the side and the 4 teens turned to see Logan. He pissed in your Cheerios. He insulted your mother. Naruto nodded. Where is she? Logan held up a cigar and looked at Hinata who narrowed her eyes and focused. The end heated and Logan nodded, taking a deep inhale of tobacco. Cajun and Elf are calming her down. It took Kane, Beast and your pop to keep her in her seat. Naruto smiled as he knew his adoptive mother would have descended from the sky and left an Uchiha stain on the ground. He's alive, Naruto said. Logan nodded. Perhaps he'll learn from this then. Logan said as all 14 snorted. How'd you get here anyway? I thought only senseis could. Naruto paused and saw Logan with a Konoha Hitai 8 strapped to his belt. It looked familiar. Your sensei let me borrow hers. She's with the red-eyed girl. They're moving into position. Naruto held his breath. Are we to continue, or should we? Give 'em hell, Logan said and walked away. Shino looked at Hinata and shook his head. I will not fight you. Besides the fact you control fire, you are my friend. Hinata sighed. I was going to forfeit. Ino shook her head. I was going to give up. I don't think I could take Lee in a straight-up fight and I want to keep things hidden. Naruto sighed. You're all going to make me fight him. I thought you loved me. Both girls kissed his cheek. I'm still not kissing you. Shino said in his deadpan voice. XX. Shino forfeited his fight. The crowd booed, but his father in the stands nodded in the logical move his son had pulled. Ino gave her notice as well. Lee seemed upset that he didn't get to test his flames of youth against the Yamanaka mind powers. Naruto, Hinata and Lee all stood in the middle of the arena. I withdraw, Hinata said, cutting off the possibility of a three-way fight. Naruto looked at Lee, who looked at him in a pleading manner. Naruto sighed. Fine, I'll fight you. Lee's smile was blinding. Naruto shuddered at the thought of the amount of pain the taijutsu user was going to put him through. He fought Guy and this mini-clone had the same personality, it seemed. Ibiki gave them both the rules and Naruto found his mind going to the cage's booth. Jean, anything yet? He asked. Not yet, and don't look so eager. The Hokage is acting as bait. Naruto sighed. I know. Is Janet in position? Naruto started the fight with Lee, exchanging punches and kicks. Yes. And Kurt is there as well. Just remember, the moment it happens. Naruto was saved from responding as Lee's fist sent him into the air. Enough of this shit. Naruto disappeared with a loud BAMF. He reappeared behind Lee and kicked him in the back. He disappeared again and put himself between Lee and the wall and kicked him again. Another BAMF and he pinballed Lee around the stadium. He reappeared again, but Lee countered. Leaf Hurricane. The kicks sent Naruto flying, and he disappeared with a BAMF. Lee looked around and he suddenly found himself surrounded by a dozen Narutos. They charged. XX. Cage box. Interesting fight, Hiruzen said to the cage. The blonde, his name is Lebo. The cage said. Yes. His adoptive family name. Hiruzen said. Next to him Orochimaru was seething. All of his plans were ruined. Years of planning stopped in this final exam. His weapon Gaara killed by a slip of a girl that his spy had said was a failure. His spy and second in command was killed by another girl that had been reported as a fangirl, a low-class ninja that would never be seen as anything beyond a genin. And what scared him was he had no information on the blonde that nearly killed the Uchiha with a technique he never heard of. He wanted to ask the old man next to him, but he had to keep up appearances and cursed that he couldn't call off the invasion. Without Gaara or Kabuto he knew it wouldn't work as planned. I might not make it out of here. The Sannin thought even as in the distance the first explosion was heard. It's now or never. He thought and went for the Hokage. Naruto disappeared with a BAMF at the sound of the first explosion and the sleep genjutsu began to fall on the crowd. He wasn't worried about his family as Kurenai and Anko were there. Naruto appeared next to the Hokage and just as the old man got away from Orochimaru and the barrier went up as the sound 4 continued with their part of their master's plan. Hey OG, want to see who can do more damage to the bastard? Naruto asked as the third shed his robes of office and stood there in his battle armor. You're younger than I am, Naruto. The third said. Orochimaru was not happy. It was to be him and the old man locked in here alone. But the Kyuubi brat was there and there was far too much the snake Sannin didn't know about him. XX. In the arena below, the sound ninja found themselves unconscious as a red, white and blue shield pinballed around and took them out in groups as it struck one then would bounce off and connect with another. Meanwhile Captain America used a judo throw to slam another ninja into the ground. You're having way too much fun, Cap. Logan said as he gutted one and slashed another. You're one to talk, Logan. Captain America said as he caught his shield on the rebound and bashed another ninja aside. His shield blocked a soundwave attack and he performed a dropkick, knocking the Odo ninja back into the waiting claws of the Wolverine. The X-Men shed their robes and joined the battle. Cain Marko, the unstoppable juggernaut, bowled the invaders over and allowed others to take care of them. His destination was the main gate. Jean used telekinesis to block shuriken and kunai and either sent them back at those who threw them or dropped them to the ground. Gambit was on the wall, his cards spinning around him, controlled by his power, and were flying at either ninja or other projectiles to protect the crowd, which the Konoha ninja were waking up and evacuating while fighting as well. Rogue wasn't holding back. Between her super strength and motherly rage, the sound ninja were falling quickly. One nin was stupid to leap onto her back, his bare forearm touching her neck. Ya shouldn't have done that, Shuga. Rogue said in English, and a moment later the man screamed before falling to the ground. Rogue shook her head as the information poured in and she smirked a moment before her hands sped through a series of hand seals. She turned as she finished the last seal. Fire style. Multiple fireball jutsu. She spat a series of fireballs like a machine gun and it seemed the sound ninja all had targets painted on them. That was like so cool. Rogue turned to see Kitty phase through a sound ninja and grab him by his collar and slam him backwards into the ground and then kick him in the face, knocking him out. I know. Ever since Naruto showed me how to use chakra so I could control my power, but this is. Kitty pulled out a pair of Eskrima sticks and attacked more sound ninja, phasing and moving. Rogue leapt into the air, her eyes scanning around for a fresh target. She saw Storm using lightning and tornadoes. Wasp was working with Beast. Her gaze found her son's girlfriends and she was surprised the four girls were fighting so well together, guarding one another's backs. She found Kurt, Wanda and TJ and knew that Kurt must have finished his task if he was back. Kurt was teleporting all around the stadium and striking with his swords. Wanda hit a sound ninja with her hex bolt and the man literally exploded in confetti. TJ was using her own abilities to guard her mother and Rogue watched her sister-in-law hex another nin and the man turned into an urn. Shaking her head, Rogue dive bombed the ninja, scattering them as she flew through them, knocking them into the air as she passed. XX. Cain Marko made a direct path to the village gates, which meant a lot of buildings got brand new doorways, vendor carts were stomped and the few invading ninja caught in his path were squished like a grape under a wrecking ball. He had a mission given to him by Storm acting as team leader and the Hokage, who offered him a chance to cut loose once they learned of the plans to attack Konoha. Cain? Jean's mental voice inquired. Nearly there, Red. How's the kid? Cain asked as he punted a sound ninja who flew between two trees 1,000 yards beyond the wall. Naruto and the Hokage have engaged Orochimaru. Naruto says something is off about him. Cain winced. He remembered the last time Naruto said that. It was the day the blonde had been forced to destroy his old running buddy Black Tom Cassidy. Shaking his head, Cain Marko attached his helmet to his armor, cutting him off from Jean, but he had a task to perform and he wasn't leaving himself open. With thundering steps as the main gate exploded inwards, Cain Marko, the unstoppable juggernaut, slammed into the summoned snake with the force of a freight train. XX. Orochimaru glared at the pair before him. You will not stop me, boy. He said with a sneer. I will kill the old man and Konoha will be destroyed. Naruto snorted. Delusional much. So far the Hokage and Naruto had fought Orochimaru with taijutsu and ninjutsu. Naruto teleporting around and even using his ability to charge items as he tossed shuriken at the traitorous Sannin and have them explode. Naruto avoided using his real power as he had a feeling he would need it down the road for something more. Hiruzen used an earth jutsu that created a river of mud to put out the flames Orochimaru spat at them. Orochimaru and Hiruzen got into a up-close and personal exchange of blows that sent the Hokage flying back, gripping the wound from the hidden wrist blade Orochimaru had on him. Naruto caught the old man and looked up, seeing the snake Sannin going through a series of hand seals. I think it's time for a reunion of Hokage's past. The Sannin said with a sneer. Hiruzen's eyes widened as Orochimaru began making signs. He saw several that he swore were a death seal. The roof they were on started to shake and the Hokage watched as a coffin rose from the ground on Orochimaru's left. It was marked first. Moments after it had fully risen, another came up. It was marked second and it was on his right. Naruto, we must stop that last coffin from rising. Hiruzen called out as a third coffin started to break the ground in front of the traitorous snake Sannin. The Hokage sent a shuriken and his hands conjured the cage shuriken as 100 of the deadly throwing stars impacted on the partially raised coffin. Naruto also created a series of cage shuriken, but as they also were imbued with energy they exploded against the coffins, causing Orochimaru to stagger back and release his hold on his seal. The Sannin cursed as all three coffins began to lower back. No. Damn you. Damn you. Naruto appeared behind him with a BAMF. No. Really. Tell us how you really feel. He said and sped through a jutsu which he finished and moments later a small tornado formed and went after the Sannin who shushin across the field behind the Hokage. You might have ruined my jutsu, but I will kill the old man. Orochimaru spat and unhinged his jaw. Moments later he spat up a wicked-looking blade that was held by his tongue and it raced through the air at the Hokage's back. Everything slowed down. XX. Gambit say we be playin' by house rules. He told the ninja that surrounded him. Naruto be right. They are skilled but they seem to lack real ability. It's like they were trained to attack like a pack of dogs. They aren't as skilled as the ninja of Konoha. He spun about, his staff blocking swords and kunai but he missed the kick that connected with his ribs. Remind me to thank Beast and Forge for improving the body armor. The Cajun mutant thought as he rolled with the blow and came up swinging. He'd run out of cards long before he ran out of targets and he knew that sheer numbers were not going to be a good thing for the X-Men. Not all of us are like Kane and Logan. He thought even as he spun and ducked he heard something whistling through the air and ducked backwards in a move he'd seen from the Matrix movie he'd taken Rogue and Naruto to see last summer. The vibranium shield struck its intended targets and a red, white and blue blur shot over as well and Gambit stood to find Captain America in the midst of the Odo ninja showing them what a super soldier was made of. Move it Cajun. A very gruff and familiar voice ordered and he looked to see Logan, his outfit in pieces and smoldering slicing into more ninja. Non-Wolverine, I thought dat you wanted a workout. Gambit said even as he started stealing shuriken and kunai from the dead and using them with his ability to lay down covering fire for the Star-Spangled Avenger and the Wolverine. Funny, and I thought it was the kid who had the sense of humor. Logan grunted taking a kunai to the chest and without missing a beat slashed the neck of the ninja that gave his uniform another hole. You think the professor would understand the decisions we've made as of late? Gambit asked going back to back with Wolverine. Logan snorted. Chuck was too tender-hearted. He needs to learn a middle ground for his ideas before he gets us all killed. Hopefully his time away can mend that. Logan said. Duck. Gambit did as Logan with a back body drop sent an Odo ninja over their heads and he landed hard. Where are the others? Gambit asked. Kane is dealing with the main gate. He put his helmet on, so I don't know what's happening. Jean's mental voice reported. Storm, Beast and Wasp are moving into their next positions. Nightcrawler, Scarlet Witch and Nocturne are on their way to help Kane. That's fine Genie, but what about my boy and his femmes? Gambit thought. Rogue and the girls have moved out of the arena and are fighting in the streets along with Kitty. I'm sorry Remy, I should have let you know. They're all fine so far. The girls are fighting very well together, but both Ino and Hinata are tiring from use of not only their powers, but their chakra reserves are running low. Gambit frowned. Logan, would you? Don't even ask Cajun. Marrow and X-23 are with them, they'll be fine. Logan growled. They were getting tired. And my boy. Gambit sent. He and the Hokage have engaged the Sannin, he's blocking me out so I don't know right now. I don't want to force it open and cost him his concentration. Jean warned. Gambit looked to where she was, and smiled as she was telekinetically throwing Odo ninja around like rag dolls. Remy LeBeau, the X-Man known as Gambit, sent a prayer that his friends and family made this out alive. XX. Ow. Ino yelled as Marrow ripped the kunai from her thigh. That hurt. Sarah shrugged as she picked up her bone club. Suck it up. You die and I'll comfort Naruto in his moments of grief. Ino growled even as she focused on the vines around her wrists and they lashed out impaling an Odo nin that was trying to sneak up on Marrow while she was playing medic. Nice. The Morlock girl said as she took out another that had come up behind Ino with what looked like bone kunai. Ino pushed to her feet and leaned against the alley wall. Their fighting had taken them out of the arena. Thanks. As I said, you die. Sigh, it would upset Naruto. Mero said, smashing another nin with her bone club before tossing it aside, and to the disgust of Ino ripped a pair of bones that had to be ribs out, but they looked like a wicked pair of short swords. Come on, flower girl, let's see if we can find the others. Hinata and Shino were that way. I think one of the Odo nin dropped a building on Laura back that way. Ino said. Split up? Mero asked. Ino shook her head. We're both tired and there are a lot of ninja left. Mero growled. Fine. Let's find Bug Boy and our newest hothead. Mero said. And Laura? Ino asked. Mero snorted. If she's even a tenth like Wolverine, she's already digging herself out and looking for someone to kill. She'll be in a real bad mood for a while. Ino nodded at this. She remembered hearing about how quickly Uncle Logan healed, and Laura was just as quick now. Lead the way, Ino said. And don't call me flower girl. Mero smirked. Plant gal then. Vine lady. Ino growled. Oh, I know poison ivy. Now that's just lame. Ino said. Of course, coming from someone who takes on the name Mero, could be worse. You could call yourself Bones. Mero growled now. Oh, how about Femur? Or Skeletor? The pair continued to bicker and shoot names at one another as they fought more Odo nin that slipped over the walls. XX. Laura growled as she woke up in the sewers of Konoha. Stinks worse than the New York sewers. What the hell are these people flushing? She looked behind and overhead and saw where she'd come through and thanked whatever deity was listening that she managed to avoid being under the heavy stones and the street had given out under her. She sniffed and growled as several figures rose up from the water. Oh, look, sewer rats, she said with a growl. Snicked. She grinned as her claws popped and she leapt forward. Time to do pest control. XX. Shino sent a swarm of his mutated bus into the group of Odo nin. One screamed like a girl as the scarab beetles devoured his flesh. Shino gave a grin. He'd learned of the beetles from one of Naruto's books, and with his mutation he was able to transform the Kikai insects in him into anything he could dream of. It had come up with several very new and dangerous bugs. Behind him the screams were for a different reason. He peeked over his shoulder to see Hinata using her hybrid Hyuga style of gentle fist along with her mutation of fire decimating the Odo nin. They fell scorched from the attack of Hinata. The street was soon littered with dead and heavily wounded ninja, none of them belonging to Konoha. Hinata turned and smiled at her longtime friend in Shino. Her smile turned to surprise as numerous figures appeared out of thin air, her Byakugan failing to detect them as they shot Shino in the back with a rifle of some kind, the darts doing their job and the bug user slumped to the ground. Hinata didn't give the attackers another chance as she summoned up her fire and melted their guns. Thwip. Hinata's hand went to the back of her neck where she felt a dart and pulled it out. Her fire surrounded her, but it was too late as whatever was in the dart took effect and she slumped to the ground. Team 1 and Team 3 reporting in. A figure emerged. Domino to General Striker, we've acquired 2 mutants that are posing as ninja. This hidden nation is a treasure trove, General. The woman identified as Domino said into her headset, her face like the others covered with the latest in stealth technology. We can grab more and. She listened then nodded. Understood, General. We're withdrawing now. Domino shut off her headset. Bag these 2 and grab a couple of the corpses of the dead ninja for study. The General says we're to pull out. The 9 people with her went about their tasks of cleaning up. They wrapped Shino and Hinata in body bags of a shimmering material. Grizz, carry them. We're hot-footing it out the south gate. Ah, Dom. The biggest of the group with her complained. I wanted to face Marco. Next time. We've got what the General wants, evac now. Domino ordered. The group faded out with their prisoners. The street was empty save for the dead Odo nin, no proof that they had ever been there. XX. Jean Grey, formerly Summers, stopped and put up a telekinetic shield and frowned. She reached out for 2 of their number and frowned deeper. Logan, I lost contact with Shino and Hinata. She sent. A growl was her answer and she looked on from her place as Wolverine separated from Gambit and Captain America, wading through the Odo nin, slashing and hacking his way to the nearest exit. Lightning flashed overhead and Jean found Storm. Aurora, where are you going? Heading to the gates to support Kane. Storm's cultured mental voice informed her. Janet and Hank are at the hospital protecting the patients that couldn't be moved. Storm informed her. Thank you. I lost contact with Shino and Hinata. They were both suddenly gone, but they're not dead. Jean informed her. The whole time her shield blocked numerous jutsus. With an annoyed look, Jean lashed out with her mind, and suddenly the 4 ninja that had been attacking her were mind wiped and thinking they were goldfish left on the floor. Kurt. Jean sent out as Storm flew away. Busy. Came the German mutant's brief response. Fine. TJ. Jean sent out. Oh, hey Red. Mom and Dad are a bit busy. Seems the morons are trying for the shelters. Jean sighed, wondering how the invaders had so much information. Very well. Just pass it on when you can that I've lost contact with Shino and Hinata. Okay. Aunt Kitty and I can look. We're being replaced by Konoha Ninja. Jean sent her thanks and focused on the fight before her, sending telekinetic force bolts sending Odo Ninja staggering into walls unconscious. Her eyes went to the dome where Naruto was. She was tempted to check on him, but with such a dangerous opponent, she knew better. XX. Hiruzen stepped aside at the last moment, but the blade sliced his shoulder, cutting through his armor with the ease of a hot knife through butter. He felt it burn and realized the blade was heavily poisoned. Poison. Damn. He thought even as he sped his hands through seals. He knew that there was only one way to actually stop his former student, and he finished the seal. The sky over them darkened and Orochimaru's already pale skin paled even more as he realized what his former sensei had just done. No, he said in a low voice. Naruto, who looked surprised. Gigi, what did you do? He asked. I did what I must. Hiruzen said to the blonde boy he saw as a grandson. I'm dying and I will not leave you to fight him alone. Dying? Naruto asked, rushing forward a series of steps, but stopped as he felt something unearthly and cold between him and the old man. The blade he spat at me was coated in poison. Hiruzen said. Orochimaru felt some of his courage return at this. Yes, and there is no antidote. He smirked even as he felt cold hands reach into his chest, and he swore he could now see the Shinigami. Let me go. He hissed and tried to move but couldn't. Not this time, my failure of a student. Hiruzen said. I let you go once before and you've come back to try and destroy us all. Hiruzen felt the Shinigami, but he also felt the poison burning through his veins quickly. Please, please give me strength to do this. The third Hokage of Konohagakure pleaded as he poured his life force into killing his student. Moments later, the Shinigami's mental voice told him, you cannot. Your life force is too weak to seal him away in you. Hiruzen cursed. He looked at Naruto and smiled. I'm afraid you will need to finish him, my boy. He said, his words feeling like lead on his tongue. Take away Orochimaru's ability to mold chakra and seal his arms away, please. The Shinigami pondered. Accepted. Once more the Hokage focused and felt as the forbidden jutsu took hold, and Orochimaru screamed. No. What have you done? I can't take your life. I'm too weak thanks to the poison you used, but I will make sure you never are able to use jutsus or chakra again. Hiruzen said, coughing into his hand and not surprised to see blood. Orochimaru found himself immobilized and was cursing his former mentor in his mind as he tried to think of a way out of this. He saw his arms turning black and he could feel his chakra draining away, his coils shrinking. You fools! Stop them! He yelled to the Odo 4 that were maintaining the barrier. My lord, release the barrier and kill them! Orochimaru roared. It took a minute and it was all the Hokage needed to finish the jutsu. As the Odo 4 released the barrier jutsu and it shattered like glass being hit by a ball, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, slumped to the roof dead, and Orochimaru screamed in anger, even as the blonde Naruto rushed to the fallen Hokage's side. XX. Old man. Naruto slid across the last couple of feet on his knees as he cradled the old man's body, tears slipped from his eyes. No. He repeated over and over. You can't do this, Gigi. It was too late. Naruto looked up, hearing a sound, and saw the Odo 4 approaching, and his eyes landed on Orochimaru. You did this. He hissed. It's your fault, Gigi is dead. Naruto said, and he called up his power. Even as Kitamaru, the 6-armed ninja, reached him, it was too late for them as Naruto's atomgun eyes glowed. Die. 4 ninja exploded messily as their bodies were ripped apart from the inside out. Orochimaru blinked as he finally felt real fear for his life as the blonde stepped forward. Now, boy, see here. Naruto took a step forward and Orochimaru decided to take the best course of action. He leapt from the roof, hoping that his soldiers, while less than when the invasion started, would cover his escape. He landed in the arena and blinked, seeing there were no Odo ninja left. He turned towards the entrance and paused, seeing a girl with bones in her hands looking at him. Are you of the Kagaya clan? Mero sneered and shook her head. Look behind you, Flatskin, she said, and Orochimaru did as he was told and yelped as Naruto appeared with a BAMF right behind him. Here, Snakey, Snakey, Naruto said and called upon his powers. Orochimaru screamed loudly as every bone in his body was snapped at once. He fell to the arena floor in tremendous pain. You did this. You are the reason Gigi is dead, Naruto said, his voice coming out a growl. He said he couldn't kill you. It was a mistake I won't make. How do you feel like bleeding? Naruto said. Orochimaru screamed as his body was covered by thousands of cuts, each bleeding freely. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Labo. You killed a man I consider a grandfather. Prepare to die. Orochimaru looked up. He reached out. PP please, mercy. Naruto looked at him. We do not train to be merciful here, Naruto said, and his eyes flashed, and Orochimaru had 1 second before his body exploded, his skin ripping to millions of shreds, his blood evaporating as it hit the air, his bones turning to powder. Naruto looked at the area where Orochimaru had been. It was blackened and he sighed. It's over, he said, looking up as Mero came closer. Her smile turned to shock as Naruto heard clapping behind him. He spun around to see someone he hoped to never see again. Apocalypse, he said the immortal mutant's name in a hushed whisper. Hello, Naruto. Impressive. Most impressive on taking that Flatskin to task, Apocalypse said in his deep voice as he seemed to come from the walls of the stadium. He stepped on the corpses of Oto and Konoha Nin that had died before the battle had spilled out of the arena. It is time for you to live up to your destiny, Apocalypse said, stepping further. Get away from him. Mero howled and leapt at Apocalypse. The immortal, his head to the side. You dare attack me, he intoned. I will wipe you away from existence as the sands had swallowed the pyramids. You shall be destroyed. Mero bade a bone axe in an overhead strike, thus while in the air left her wide open, and Apocalypse lashed out. A spiked hand impaled Mero through the left side of her chest, right through the heart. No, Naruto yelled as he turned and sent a trio of charged cards at Apocalypse, who tossed Mero aside as if she was trash. Naruto called upon his power and frowned as he couldn't find flesh and bone to manipulate. What are you? He asked before the massive backhand knocked him out. Apocalypse. The immortal mutant saw the X-Men coming from the stands and waved his hand, putting up a barrier that blocked them from getting into the arena, their powers rebounding. Foolish children. I have what I want. Apocalypse laughed as he and Naruto vanished. Moments later the barrier collapsed, as did Ino Yamanaka as she saw Mero. Naruto, she said in a broken voice.